We are up and running on a Monday here on Off the Bench. Reed Mouse here hosting. I think this is going to be the only day. It's going to be the only day that I'm going to host this week. And I'll be completely honest with you guys here. Normally, and I'm not saying I take 2 hours to prepare because heaven knows we don't do that. But a lot of the time, I write out at least segment by segment what I'm going to talk about, we're going to roll. And I was talking with Stone before the show started because the Cincinnati Bengals lost, 37-24 yesterday? I think that was the score. Who freaking knows? I told him that I don't know where to start. I was like, I have all these thoughts. I have all these ideas. I know I'm going to rip. I know I'm going to ramble. I know I'm going to go for an hour. I'll probably be yelling at some point. I'll get animated. My heart rate will start pumping up. But it felt almost like a stone at the top of the hill, pun intended here for my producer. A stone at the top of the hill. You just got to give it a good push. And we just bring it on down the hill talking about our beloved Cincinnati Bengals, who dropped to 2-3, first time under 500 on the season. Stone Shields, producer in here today. Stone, did you have a lot of fun watching the Bengals play yesterday?
Wouldn't say that. Wouldn't say that at all. There's a lot to unpack here, obviously, but I think the moral of the story here is that Jake Browning, he's not that guy, and I think some of us knew that when Joe Burrow went down, and it's becoming more and more obvious each week, and I know you have plenty to say about Jake Browning as well.
Yeah, and that was the point, is when I said, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to segue into – because the primary thing I'm going to be talking about today is that there's two. And it's the same thing that people are going to be talking about all throughout this city. This is the first, local-based sports podcast talk show in the morning, 10 a.m. All the other ones start in the afternoon. They're all going to be talking about the same two guys. And it's the guys that names should be on the chopping block. It is two names that guys have been wondering what the heck's going on, and that is, of course, the starting quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals at this current moment, Jake Browning, and the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, Zac Taylor. And I'm going to rip into them for the entire hour probably, because I can't remember ever a time watching the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's not like we are the Green Bay Packers or the Pittsburgh Steelers or the 1990s Dallas Cowboys, where we've had long periods of sustained success, or the 2000s Patriots or the current Chiefs, where I'm expecting we are Cincinnati Bengals fans. The bar at which we set for happiness isn't high at all. It doesn't take a world-class Olympic high jumper to get over that bar. It's pretty much just a little jump, a little hop. You can do it on 2 feet. It's a broad jump. And still, for 3 consecutive weeks, and I don't care what happened in the fourth quarter yesterday, for 3 consecutive weeks, the Cincinnati Bengals looked like the worst team in the National Football League. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I didn't watch the entire Cardinals games. I know there's a highlight tape about how ridiculous that game was, and the Tennessee Titans and the New York Jets lost by 40 points. We lost by 38 to this Vikings team who doesn't look very good, and we fumbled it a million times. We lost by 25 to a Denver Broncos team, and we couldn't move the ball at all. In fact, even when we had our world-class quarterback, Joe Burrow, and won the game against the Cleveland Browns, we had, 8 total yards in the second half? We might not be the worst team in the league, in the National Football League, the NFL, 32 teams. We might not be number 32, but we're certainly in the threes. Where we rank is certainly starting with a 3. That's where we're at right now. It has been horrendous. And yesterday, watching that game, I didn't do the live watch-along. I had done every game up until that point on the live watch-along. Shout out to Craig and Andrew and Mike Hart that did that, bared that responsibility. I was out working somewhere else. I was down at Smoke Justice working a watch party. Yesterday was the first time all year long, where I actually enjoyed watching it. Because it was a farce for a half. And it had been for 2 games. And this was certainly the best game they've played in the past 3. But top to bottom, it was not good. The first drive on defense, we miss a million tackles. We're sending Joseph Asai out into coverage, and who does he have to cover? Sam Laporta, one of the best tight ends in the league. Or if he's not covering Sam Laporta, he's going after Amon-Ra St. Brown. And the thing about the defense is a lot of people today will be giving them credit. And I don't want to completely bash them. But they weren't that good yesterday either. We are comparing them to the offense and to the rest of the team, which was a complete dumpster fire until the fourth quarter. Yeah, they made some big plays. Yeah, they had a couple sacks. But let's not act like this was the 85 Bears playing defense yesterday. Comparatively speaking, it was better. But it wasn't like there was anything. So then the offense gets out there, and for a half, just absolutely miserable. 3 picks by Jake Browning, and they all looked like some of the worst passes I had ever seen. Tries a back shoulder ball to T. Higgins that he misses 6 feet towards the field, throwing it directly to the defender. Tries a deep ball 40 yards downfield, which if you guys haven't seen the clip of Craig Sandlin doing the watch along, his oh my God when that pass is LOL funny because that's exactly how we all thought at the end of the half. Just heaves it downfield, and it's 10 yards shy. Okay, so somehow it's 14-3, which is where I will give credit to the defense, where they kind of played well and kept us in the game. It's 14-3 at half. We get 3 points on the board. Everyone was sad about the for lack of a better word, the chicken shit call to take the field goal and not go for a touchdown at the end of the half by Jake Browning and Zac Taylor. And I'll actually defend that call because when things are just spiraling out of control, you want to have some positive momentum going into the locker room. And if you don't score there, if you go for it and you don't get in the end zone, it just feels like the game is lost. You get 3 points, you kind of at least push the can down the road. All right, it's 14-3 our ball at half. And what do we come out? Jake Browning throws an interception into triple coverage for T. Higgins? No. Jahmyr Chase? No. Mike Gesicki. Was it at least a high-impact play if we complete it? No, it was about a 5-yard crossing route, about an 8-yard crossing route. Oh, really? Well, would the pass have at least been completed if there were no defenders there? No, it was 2 yards behind Mike Gesicki running across the field. Triple coverage, guarded man, not one of our elite playmakers, wasn't a high-impact play, and not only that, you miss it. And back to the Cincinnati Bengals and how we were like, hey, this isn't a high bar that we have to clear here in Cincinnati. This isn't a high we're not asking for the world. I know we've been saying we're Super Bowl contenders. The window is my career with Joe Burrow, all that. This is not the Green Bay Packers or the 49ers in our quarterback success, right? We didn't go Joe Montana to Steve Young to Jeff Garcia. We didn't go Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. We've had a good run recently, Carson Palmer to Andy Dalton to Joe Burrow, but we've also had some stinkers playing along the way that have had to start. My dad went to the game yesterday. He calls me up after the game and he goes, Jake Browning is the worst quarterback I had ever seen play for the Cincinnati Bengals. Think about that. Akili Smith, Ryan Finley, Jeff Driscoll, name them. John Kitna wasn't that good. And then apologies for the older crowd. I don't know who was playing quarterback for us besides Ken Anderson and Boomer Esiason in the 80s and 90s. I don't know who was there. No, it wasn't good. But Jake Browning with his pass today were absolutely incompetent yesterday. And it was, like I said, almost enjoyable to watch because you were just sitting there going like, oh, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And on top of that, so they fight back. They go down, they score a couple touchdowns. Boo Birds were out. Jake Browning plays a little bit better. The offense, Jahmyr Chase makes a huge touchdown, 67 yards, whatever it was. And you're starting to think in the back of your mind, we all knew that we were always going to lose, but you start thinking in your mind like, oh man, this is kind of getting contested. What happens? We try an onside kick that was just basically handed to us, and I can't get it. All right, well, we get the ball back with 2 minutes to go. Our ball down 2 scores. What happens here? First play, safety. And you're just like, what is this team? What is this team? I'll tell you what it is. I think it's legitimately the worst team in the league. I genuinely think that it is. And I've been wrong more times than I've been right since I started hosting this show about a month ago. And I hope I am. I hope I am wrong. I hope we're talking in a month that this team had somehow found 2 wins along this stretch. We're 14.5-point underdogs against the Green Bay Packers. I hope we find some wins along this stretch in the coming weeks. And we're like, oh, how's Joe progressing? Are we going to get those 3 wins? Because once again, we end the season with the Browns, Cardinals, and Dolphins. That could be 3 wins. The Baltimore Ravens, who knows what's happening to them? They're 1-4. Is their season derailed? Like what's going to look like? Got the Jets on the schedule. I hope that's what we're talking about in a month. But realistically, at this point, what I think we're going to be talking about is what we're going to do with the next coach, what we're going to do with Trey Hendrickson, what we're going to do if we get in the top 5 pick. But that's all a conversation for another time. Stone, your overall reaction of watching your Cincinnati Bengals in their game yesterday?
Yeah, obviously incredibly frustrating with the product that they put out on the field. I think the past couple of games with the Denver game and the Minnesota game, you can kind of look at it and basically say nobody played winning football in those games. Absolutely nobody did. And Jake Browning kind of echoed this after the game yesterday against Detroit. There were some guys that played winning football for Cincinnati yesterday. But when your head coach and your quarterback are that incompetent in the NFL, you're just not going to have a chance to win. And that's ultimately what happened with Zac Taylor, and that's ultimately what happened with Jake Browning. And I mentioned this to you off the air. I don't know if the Bengals, it sucks to sit here and play the what-if game. Nobody likes to do it, but we're going to do it a little bit here with obviously the star quarterback being out. I don't know if the Bengals beat the Vikings or the Broncos with Joe Burrow. I don't. I mean, with all the fumbles that they had in the Minnesota game and couldn't get anything going offensively against Denver, the defense was bad against Denver there as well. But I'd say pretty confidently, if Joe Burrow's out there, I feel like the Bengals team wins yesterday. Those DBs for Detroit are not good, and they're obviously banged up in their secondary as well. That, to me, is a game where Joe Burrow goes out there and throws for over 400 yards, and it's a complete shootout. And we kind of saw elements of that late in the game in the fourth quarter. But Jake Browning was just that bad. And 2 of those interceptions that he threw, he's standing in his own end zone when he does it. All right, and then you feel like it's just a gift. You're sitting there at halftime looking up at the scoreboard saying, how in the world is it 14-3 right now? It feels like it should be 24-0, and it's 14-3. And you got a chance, you're getting the ball to start the second half. And then immediately, horrible throw, horrible decision, throws it right to the other team. So things are obviously slipping away from Cincinnati. We feared that this would happen, considering the schedule is the way it is and just the level at which they're playing football right now. And they're sitting here at 2-3. And then the question is, what do you do? Do you continue to ride with Jake Browning as your quarterback, or do you try to make a move? I don't think the answer – I don't know if there is an answer, first of all, but I definitely don't think the answer is currently on this team. Is Brett Rippon going to give you a better chance to win than Jake Browning? No. Sean Clifford? No. Mike White? Maybe, but probably not.
No. Jake on the current roster, Jake Browning is the best quarterback to play. But I'll ask this question. Because I really want to know. It all comes down to what you think, what you want out of this season. What you think this team is, what do you think they're capable of, and then B, what do you want out of it? And when I look at this team, even with a Joe Burrow, you said that you think that if Joe Burrow plays yesterday, they win that game. Maybe so. I think that honestly, I think that if they played against the Vikings, if Joe Burrow plays against the Vikings, I think we win that game fairly handedly. I don't think that game spirals out the way that it does. And I think that he handles the pressure from the blitzing. Beside the point. Even with Joe Burrow here, the ceiling of this team, if he played every game, was about where we've been the last few years, which is a 9-10 win team. You could say maybe the AFC's worse this year, so you can expect them to do one game better, which they've been 9-8 the last 2 years. Maybe they're a 10-7 team this year. That's the ceiling. And I don't think that they'd be true Super Bowl contenders. They might be frisky for a game in the postseason, which you could say if they can win a postseason game, then they should be competing, right? But I look at this team, and I truly, I don't believe that we're close to a competitive window, to be a sustained competitive team like we were a couple years ago where we went to the Super Bowl and went to the AFC Championship game. I don't think we're that close. In fact, I think we're either one amazing draft where we hit on 5 starters, 6 starters, or 2 good drafts. Either way, we're 2 years away in my mind from being that competitive team in that competitive window. So then the question, if that's what I believe, why would we go out and get a better quarterback? And I see everyone because you're experiencing the same things I'm experiencing. I'm watching Jake Browning play, and I think he might be the worst quarterback, at least in the last 3 games. He played fine in 2023. Played well in 2023 even, especially for a backup. Right now, he has played the worst quarterback play that I think I've ever seen in the NFL. And we've been blessed here, not as much as other teams, but we've had decent quarterback play between Joe Burrow, Andy Dalton, Carson Palmer in my life. But it's the worst quarterback play I've ever seen. And with Jahmyr Chase and T. Higgins and all these weapons, you'd be able to at least move the ball better than he has. And you can say the offensive line's terrible. That's fine. Most bad teams don't have good weapons or a good offensive line. We've at least got elite weapons. Not good weapons, elite weapons. So I understand that you're seeing Jake Browning and you're saying, I think we need to go get another quarterback because you're tired of watching this guy play. And the reason that I think I'm against it is because what happens if you go out and you get any of the names that were suggested? What happens if you go out and get a Jameis Winston or a Kirk Cousins or a Joe Flacco? Or someone asked me last night in our Discord, would you trade a 5th for Anthony Richardson? If Shane Steichen can't make Anthony Richardson work, what do you think Zac Taylor's going to do with the guy? Shane Steichen, who's turning Daniel Jones into a Pro Bowl quarterback, couldn't make Anthony Richardson work. I don't care if he's 23. I don't care if he's got the tools. It clearly wasn't working. Couldn't even make the layups. So, no, I don't want to go out and trade for any of those guys because what happens if we get that? I think we put ourselves in a worse spot, which is that limbo land to where, okay, we get a Jameis Winston, we win a couple games. We beat the Bears, we beat the Jets. We stick around, and all of a sudden we're at the end of the year, we're 7-10, 8-9, 9-8. Once again, on the outside end, looking in for the postseason. And I used to be a fan that just, I wanted to sit down on Sundays and watch the team compete. That's all I wanted. In fact, there's group text messages with me and my friends talking about how I didn't want to tank for, at the time, Tua Tagovailoa. It turned out to be Joe Burrow at the end of the year. It was called the Tua Bowl. We were tanking for Tua. And we ended up Joe Burrow was the better pick, and obviously that's much of that. I was in favor of, hey, let's just compete. Let's just keep playing. I don't want to tank. I want to go out there and win. Now I think I'm on board with just, hey, because what does 7-10 get you? The 10th pick? This team, this front office, this current leadership has shown no capacity that they're able to pick outside of the top 5 picks in the draft. I mean, we hit on Joe Burrow and Jahmyr Chase. Yeah, they were top 5 picks. So I want to get near there. I want to get near the top pick. I want to be able to trade away the second overall pick for that year's first and next year's first from a team because some team's hungry for a quarterback. I get wanting to go out and get another quarterback. I don't know where you're at, Stone, but I just don't see how it helps the Bengals long term. So I don't want to do it. I'm okay with watching the worst quarterback that I've ever seen quarterback the Cincinnati Bengals. Put him out for lambs to the slaughter. And he's played well, so, maybe you'll get a few wins out of him. It doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it's going to turn out that way. But I am against the idea of going out and get a quarterback. I think you were a week or two ago, but I don't know if your mind has changed in that regard.
Right now it's bleak however you want to spin it. Obviously, I would lean the other way. I would lean towards making some phone calls. They should be they're doing that right now. They're sitting together at Paycor Stadium, and they're throwing out names like Kirk Cousins and Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson and Joe Flacco and maybe even Derek Carr too. I would hope they're doing their due diligence right now trying to figure that out. But obviously now the timing gets a little funny, right? If you had done this last week, Now you have a new quarterback in the building. He's getting acclimated. You go with Jake Browning against Detroit. It's ugly. And then you can think about him possibly being ready for the Green Bay game or at least Pittsburgh on a short week on Thursday night. Now if you do it, you're borderline in that spot where it's like, well, are we too late here? We've already dropped 3 games. It's 2-3. But I think really Jake Browning honestly may have bought himself some time with this performance in the fourth quarter. I get it was garbage time. I get that, Detroit probably wasn't flying around with the same speed and same aggression that they were earlier in the game. But, if he plays like he did in the fourth quarter the way he does throughout the entirety of that game, I think definitely you're looking to bring somebody in. But and then you look at the scoreboard, and obviously Zac Taylor is going to try to spin it positively. Like, well, it's 37-24. It wasn't all that bad. Jake Browning had 3 touchdown drives in the fourth quarter. Maybe he showed what he is capable of doing as the starter. But anybody that watched that game, it was a heck of a lot worse than 37-24. It was another blowout. But you were able to salvage some points with hitting some explosive to Jahmyr Chase late in the game. So I'm personally on the side of do your due diligence, try to bring somebody else in. It's just clear watching that Jake Browning cannot play competent football at the professional level. It's just unfortunate. He said all the right things after the game. He acknowledged the fact that he stunk and he needs to be better, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the accountability, but I think you got to try something else, and unfortunately there isn't a better option on the roster, so the only thing you can do is try to bring somebody else in.
You mentioned talking about these last 3 games and how uncompetitive they were. Like, you see the final score, 37-24, and that's almost a cliche. It was not as competitive, or it was a lot more competitive than the score presents. I would argue that the first half yesterday was the least competitive the Bengals had looked in this 3-game stretch. And that's understanding that they went down 31-3 with the Vikings, or that they were down 21-3 against the Broncos in the first half. Because in those games, the game was actually somewhat competitive on both sides of the ball for the first 28 minutes of the half. It was the final 2 minutes where things just spiral out. In the Vikings game, we have turnover. They score on all of them, and all of a sudden the game's blown out. Broncos, same thing. We give them a chance to score, and they take it. This game, like, from the opening onset, it felt like we weren't in this thing at all. It was only after kind of a miracle run in the fourth quarter that you start thinking, is this game a little more competitive? And that's the beauty of the NFL, that stuff kind of happens on a regular basis, and it kind of gets your heart pumping a little bit. And he did play better in the fourth quarter. I thought it was funny. I asked you to pull this clip up. Chatterbox tweeted this out. This is from the presser yesterday. This is Zac Taylor talking about Jake Browning's performance.
It's, again, put this on me. I got to do a better job getting this into a rhythm, getting this away where we can sustain some drives, put points on the board. There's some plays he's going to want to have back. I'm glad he hung in there. He made some plays for us down the stretch, 3 straight touchdown drives at the end of the game. I'm sure a lot of people wanted him on the bench at that point. I could hear it. And he stuck with him, and he comes back and has 3 straight drives for touchdowns. And that's the Jake Browning I know. He's resilient. He'll stare adversity in the face. You can count on him to keep bouncing back. Obviously, we got to protect the ball better to be able to beat a team of that caliber. So we're not going to run from that. But to sit here and say I'm not proud of our football team for the way that they fought back, that wouldn't be true. I'm extremely proud of these guys, the way that they continue to fight.
All right, so I respect Zach. I think it's time for a regime change. I've been a long Zac Taylor supporter. It's pretty clear that he's good at saying the right things. It's pretty clear that he backs his guys and everything like that. But there's 2 things in that presser that drive me up a wall. The first, where he says, I'm sure some people wanted me to bench. He almost says it like kind of snarky. I'm sure some people wanted me to bench Jake Browning. I heard it. And then he gives that little chuckle right there. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever watched football, my guy, NFL, college, but when someone's playing as bad as Jake Browning, you boo him. You don't handle it. It's the worst. It's the worst that anyone's looked in the NFL this year. From what was supposed to be a competitive team, from a team that he took over at 2-0. And they have looked uncompetitive for 3 consecutive weeks. An offense that was the best offense in the league last year. Granted, with Joe Burrow, we're not asking you to be the best offense in the league, but you have Jahmyr Chase and T. Higgins, and the line's not good, but you had a running back that had 1,400 yards, and we can't figure this out. And Jake's throwing passes that wouldn't win you a high school league title. Yeah, people want you to bench him because we've seen enough. 63-point loss in the last 2 weeks. 38, 25, and then you add on this. We were 10.5-point underdogs at home, and he didn't even cover that. Not that betting lines or anything. I'm just telling you that even though the score, it's gotten so bad here in Cincinnati. We lost by 2 touchdowns yesterday, and we're sitting here going like, oh, we played a little better. We played a little better. Looked a little better. But competed in that fourth quarter. That's how bad things have gotten. So I don't need that kind of, and maybe I'm just being a little touchy about it. But it almost was like snarky to me where he's like, I heard the crowds. They're booing him. And I will give Jake Browning credit in that capacity. And it's one of the things that was abundantly clear from the first time that he took snaps back in 2023 is that he does have kind of a moxie about him, does have a presence. And you want guys that believe in themselves. It was objectively funny thinking about the "you should have never effing cut me" clip yesterday. In the height of all that, my buddy brought it up, and we all just started dying laughing because it is objectively funny. Just after he throws the third pick, should have never effing cut me. He's got that moxie about him. Doesn't have the arm strength, doesn't have the accuracy. I don't think he has the pocket presence. I don't think he has the athletic ability to scramble around, though he's probably a little more athletic than we're giving him credit for. But still, man, am I being a little too hard on Zach by saying he sounded almost a little snarky? And I don't understand where that snark would come from because I was watching the game and it was terrible.
I think you are making a little something out of nothing there, to be honest. But I get why you would be frustrated. And I get, like, it was loud in there. They were booing. It felt like I wasn't around for the 90s, but just hearing and reading about the 90s seemed like it was very similar as far as, there's a lot of people from the other side, a lot of Lions fans in the crowd. It was, stripe the jungle. I didn't think they wanted to stripe it in blue, and that's certainly what it looked like in the game yesterday, right? You got people with bags on their heads, right? We haven't seen that in several years for the Cincinnati Bengals team, booing every time Jake Browning is going out onto the field, and certainly booing when they go 3 and out, and he's leaving the field and throwing interceptions. So I get the frustration. I don't think Zach had much of a choice. I think you had to sit there and ride with him because you had Brett Rippon behind him. What has Brett Rippon had? What has he done?
I'm cool with Jake playing. I'll make that point abundantly clear. I think he might be the worst quarterback that's ever played for this team, but I'm cool with him playing because I've seen him compete well 2 years ago, and if he continues to play like he's played these last few weeks, then we're going to be in line for a top 5 pick, which at this point seems like the best course forward. So I'm cool with him playing. I don't need him to kind of be snarky towards fans and be like, I hear you booing. I hear him booing. That's what it sounded like to me, is he was kind of just taking a jab like, you guys booed him, and what did he do? He showed you guys up. He scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter against this ballyhoo Detroit Lions defense. That's what I don't need from Zach.
Yeah, I don't think he was doing that at all. I think he was basically just like, yeah, I heard it, and he had the resilience to go out there and keep playing and keep competing, and he was able to score 3 touchdowns. I do think there's some things from the Zac Taylor press conference that really could infuriate you a little bit, and one would be that he's acting like he has confidence in Jake Browning going forward. Now, he did leave the door open for a potential personnel switch. Do you think that's coming, or do you think that they're going to continue to ride with Jake Browning? I know you said at this point you're probably anti-trade for a quarterback, but are you just going to keep rolling him out there based on what he's done on the field over the course of the last few weeks? I think if you would have played this game against Detroit and it was all a disaster again, you couldn't just sit there and blame Jake Browning, then yeah, maybe he's out there again. But as I mentioned earlier, this is a quarterback issue. You win that game with competent quarterback play, and he didn't give it to you. And if you keep just rolling the same guy out there each and every week, it might feel like we're cooked here, but 2 and 3 technically still have life. You're gonna lose the locker room if you keep doing that and he keeps playing that way.
Yeah, and that's where I do want to give credit to Zach for saying the right things. He's doing his best not to. He's in a really tough spot to where like he's trying to say the right things, not only just for him but for the locker room, so that they see that he's still behind them and everything like that. But it's pretty clear that things aren't good. He left the door open for personnel change. I truly can't see a world in which we go out and get anybody. I can't see a trade happening. And if we put in one of the other guys, Brett or Sean Clifford or Mike White or any of those guys, I mean, hang it up at this point, man. Like I'd rather just see Jake Browning continue to play so that we know if we need to go get a backup quarterback next year. Because I'd still ride with him over the other things. I'll say this about Jake. 2 years ago on this show, Trace, boss, stood here on the show, and it was when the Bengals were 1-3 and just got blown out by the Tennessee Titans. And at this point, Joe Burrow was playing on an injured calf, and he had not looked good. In fact, PFF graded him as the worst quarterback in the league. And me and I think it was Elliott at the time, we're fighting. We're like, keep playing Joe. I don't care if they look bad. I don't care what happens. You got to play Joe. You got to ride with Joe. And Trace had said, listen, at this moment, he's the worst quarterback in the league. Play Jake Browning. It can't get worse. And by the end of the year, we saw Jake Browning play in 2023, and he looked good. Had a couple 300-yard passing games, went 4-3 as a starter. Like, he looked all right. And I admitted. I said, hey, Trace, you're right. You're right there. I was wrong. I was off the mark back there. But then I started thinking about it. And my take was that if there's ever a chance to play Joe Burrow over Jake Browning, you play Joe Burrow even if he's banged up, even if he's hobbled. And now that we've seen this, I'm right back on board. The answer's always that. It's always that. If Joe could play, you play Joe. Point blank. Even if he's banged up, even if he's hobbled, I don't care. You play him. Because it is so abundantly clear. And God, it's almost... If you want solace in it, it's us Joe Burrow truthers, as we're called, or us Joe Burrow. We always defend him tooth and nail. It's abundantly clear that he might be the best dang quarterback in this entire league, might be the best athlete in this league, because when he's gone, this team is completely incompetent. It's completely gone. So no, I don't think that they're going to replace Jake. At least, I mean, it would take one more week, and even. You brought this up off air. Let's say they trade for someone. Let's say they go out and get a Jameis Winston. When's he going to be ready to play? Not this week. Not week one. Okay, well, next week we play on a Thursday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is he going to be ready in the next 10 days? No, probably not. So we're going to ride with Jake Browning for at least 2 more games. And then we go, I think it's Jets, Bears, bye. So maybe he'll be ready for those games. But I guess I don't see the value. And on top of that, I just know how this team operates, and I can't foresee there being calls. There was those rumors that came out when Joe got hurt that we were calling around asking price points. Maybe it's different now. Maybe the price is different, and we weren't comfortable with it a couple weeks ago because we thought we had this backup quarterback that could play. And we're like, well, maybe we shouldn't make the deal there. There's clearly was some sense of appetite for it at one point, and we'll see if it continues going down that way. But I don't anticipate it happening anytime soon. I don't. Other thing that Zac Taylor said that some people might disagree with was I'm really happy with our guys fighting. And they played well in the fourth quarter. I think I even sent a tweet out because it seemed like the Bengals were heading down a path of they're going to lose by 30 points. Because we had seen it against the Vikings. We saw it against the Broncos where they were just done. The team was phoning it in, and they came back and fought, and part of it was fueled by a couple big passes from Jake Browning to Jahmyr Chase. In fact, that one touchdown pass on not the 67-yarder where Chase got wide open, but the one on the corner of the end zone, that was a heck of a pass from Jake. And they did fight a little bit, but it just falls on deaf ears. What was your opinion on the I'm glad of the way our team fought, they continued to fight, because it felt like, once again, I know I'm making a mountain out of a molehill here, but it just felt like, what are you talking about, Zach? We've gotten blown out now in 3 consecutive games.
Yeah, I think there's nothing really Zac Taylor can go in there and say where we're all going to be like, oh yeah, great job, Zach. We appreciate you saying that. It's just when you lose like that as many times in a row as Cincinnati has, there's nothing the head coach can go up there and say where the fan base is going to be like, oh, I appreciate you saying that. That's well said, and we're looking forward to watching you go out there again next week. That's just not the reality of the situation. I think they do deserve a little bit of credit for continuing to fight. The defense was fighting all game long, and I think that can be a little bit promising. As you mentioned earlier, there's some people that are sitting there like, oh, the defense is great. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's not. They aren't the 85 Bears out there, but is there a chance that you could win with this defense. They look like an average defense, which is a step in the right direction considering what this defense has been certainly last year and even the year before to some degree there as well. So that's certainly something that you need to consider when it comes to the defense. But, the past couple of weeks they had quit, and this week they didn't quit. They kept fighting till the end, and I think in large part it's because they were having some success on defense. They were able to apply some pressure on Jared Goff. That was promising, right? Miles Murphy had a sack. Trey Hendrickson, he certainly looks like he was out there and he cares to play winning football. So I think at the end of the day, that's what circles the conversation back to Jake Browning, because there was enough positives where it was like, well, if you get competent quarterback play, maybe you have an actual chance to win the game. And obviously that's something that didn't transpire for the Cincinnati Bengals. So, people can say what they want about Zac Taylor after the game, his press conference, whatever. We're going to continue to, rip him apart if they continue to lose. But where do you stand right now? I know that last week you kind of crashed out a little bit, saying you want to blow up everything, including the head coach and the quarterback. Is there a way where we go into the bye and you want Zac Taylor to still be the guy, one, to finish the season or to be back in 2026?
Sans winning out for the rest of the year, or being a 11-win team, and sans something magical like that, which I think we can all agree is like a 1% chance of happening. Sans that, I'm ready for a regime change, because it's clear that whatever was going on that happened, that was there when they went to the Super Bowl, when they went to the AFC Championship game, the chemistry, the able to fundamentally help young players continue to succeed, because that's the one thing that gets talked about a little bit, but I don't think it's talked about enough. Players come here that have had success elsewhere and don't continue to put on that performance. Like the thing that we've always talked about the offensive line, if you listen to national pundits, they'll talk about how this team doesn't make it a point to improve their offensive line. They have made it a point to improve it. They've spent the majority of their money. I think we have one of the highest paid offensive lines in the league. We've used first-round draft picks on Amarius Mims, and we used a second-round draft pick on Jackson Carman, which maybe Amarius Mims hits, but we know Jackson Carman was a terrible pick. They've attempted it, they just haven't done well. And then we bring in these guys that were successful elsewhere, Kappa, Karras, Reisner, all these names that have been successful linemen, and then they get here and they just don't work anymore. And a big part of that was, it's just the way that Joe Burrow plays. He hangs in there too long. He's, we're passing too much. So they're always going back, and it just wears on and wears on, which might be partly true, but it's pretty clear that this team can't develop talent either. This team isn't developing talent the same way that successful teams in the league are. Even guys that Sheldon Rankins on the defensive side last year, he had a great year the year before he got here. He comes here, he's completely inadequate. Geno Stone comes here, completely inadequate. I don't know what happened to where we're not developing talent anymore, but that's pretty clear. And that falls under the head coach and his subsequent coaching staff underneath him. It just does. Zac Taylor seems like a fantastic dude. It seems like the players like playing for him, which you always appreciate. But it's pretty clear that there needs to be something new. And I've brought this up before. Whenever you make a decision to leave a job, to break up with a girlfriend, to do anything, think to yourself, okay, what would happen when this happens? Like, what happens when this breakup happens? I break up with this girlfriend. Is she going to find a new boyfriend right away? Or a guy's going to be hitting her up all the time? Same way with the job. If I leave this job, or is this job going to be filled up right away? If I fire this employee, is this employee going to be swept up right away? And thinking about that with Zac Taylor. If we fire Zac Taylor right now, what's the best job that he's going to get? He's not going to get another head coaching job anytime soon. At least not in the NFL. Maybe offensive coordinator for a bad team, like a team that's not competitive. They're not going to hire him to some contender. He's going to go to a bad team and be an offensive coordinator, or he'll go to like a mid-division one, like a Power 5 bad team in a Power 4, and he'll be the head coach there. Like those are your options. Like the Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh might be out here soon. They're 1-4. They'll probably be 1-5 at the end of this week. Things aren't going well. He's had a fantastic career. He's going to be in their Hall of Fame if he hasn't already, but sometimes things run its course. If the Baltimore Ravens fire John Harbaugh, his job, he will be without a job as long as he wants to be without a job. People will start hitting him up right away. And in fact, if that happens, we should hit him up right away. Man, we know we ain't going to get him because he's probably going to cost $10 million, and Mike Brown ain't going to give $10 million to a head football coach. But it's pretty clear that I'm done with Zach. Sans a miraculous run. This team's righted the ship. They look like true contenders. Joe Burrow comes back and everything's great. Sans that, I'm ready. I'm ready with the new. I'm ready with trying somebody else. Joe Brady, whoever it is, whatever name you want to throw out there. I'm cool because currently at this current iteration, this team's not developing well. This team's not playing well. This team isn't competing at a high level. This team, the same thing that we've always said about Zac Taylor that we've given him credit for, to where they always compete. There's not a whole lot of penalties. Those things are gone. So you're sitting here wondering like, all right, well, what do we keep you around for? If the things that we gave you credit for aren't happening, about how your team's always fighting, there seems to be good chemistry, and they're not doing that anymore, then what are we keeping you around for? And I can't imagine things get better after this week unless we beat the Packers as 14-point underdogs. Are you done with Zach?
It's tough here at this point. I've long been called a Zac Taylor apologist, big Zac Taylor believer.
Same.
I'm not ready to pull the trigger yet. I don't think this organization would do something like that. Obviously some coaches around the league get fired, going into a bye. Bengals obviously have a few more games before they do that. But, I'm open to having the discussion on what to do after the season. You let them finish the season, and then you sit there for a couple of weeks. You try to evaluate everything, what went wrong, what went right. Obviously not much at all going right now. And then you have that discussion. I've always, people have been frustrated with Zac Taylor for years, even when they went to the Super Bowl. And I've always been like, that's ridiculous. Stop it right now. He's fine. At the end of the year, I'm open now to having that discussion and trying to figure out what.
They can't sit around for 2 weeks. If that was the case, they can't do that because the coaching carousel starts on Black Sunday. Like, people start getting hired right away.
Well, you're not getting a big name if you fire him.
Okay, that's a good point.
You're not getting a big name at all if you fire him. Like, that's the thing. Everyone says Joe Brady. I mean, Buffalo obviously lost last night, but I would imagine Joe Brady's going to be one of the top targets, right? And there's going to be, 6 or 7 openings? And I would say the top team probably going to have interest in Joe Brady. And, if he's making $10 million, you're paying Zach, $4 million, right? If Joe Brady's probably going to go somewhere for 10. It's my guess. Obviously, this is all, guesswork here at this point. Bengals aren't paying him that, all right? But, I think it's – I want to know what Joe Burrow actually thinks, and we're not going to know because Joe Burrow has said publicly, he wants Zac Taylor to be his coach for his entire career. He said that a couple of years ago. Does he truly believe that anymore? Because you've seen some frustration with Joe Burrow when it comes to Taylor getting the play calls in. And, some people would say, well, the reason we're in this spot is because Joe Burrow wanted, his receivers to get paid, and now we're here, and they can't win with this. So maybe we shouldn't trust Joe Burrow. Maybe we should let him be the quarterback and not the GM. That's fine. But I at the end of the day, I fall back on that. If Joe Burrow thinks we can win with Zac Taylor, then let's keep it going. But I don't know. I feel like Joe Burrow's mindset maybe has changed a little bit from when he sat down in an interview a couple years ago and said he wants him to be the guy for the rest of his career. All things were going well when he said it, right? They were going to the Super Bowl, AFC Championship. So I'm interested to think what Joe Burrow would think as it relates to keeping Zach around.
Yeah, and I've long been, as much as I am a Joe Burrow guy, I've long been, maybe he shouldn't be making all the decisions. Maybe we should have someone push back against him and shouldn't just make him basically the king of the operation. Here's what I'll say about the Cincinnati Bengals job. If we would have fired Zac Taylor at the end of last year, which I wasn't in favor of, hand up, I wasn't in favor of. He had 4 consecutive winning seasons. There was always some built-in excuse, whether it been a banged-up Joe Burrow 2 years ago or a terrible defense last year. I was in favor of keeping Zac Taylor. If we would have fired Zac Taylor last year, there would have been coaches truly lining up at the door, especially offensive coaches, lining up outside the door of Paycor Stadium to either get the job or get one of the TVs that they sell at the end of the year. But they'd be lining up there because this would be a great opportunity for them. They understand that whenever they take a job, you pretty much got one pull of the trigger on the quarterback situation, whether it be the rookie that you draft or the guy that you're taking over. You pretty much got one pull of the trigger. And there wouldn't have been a better offensive situation than what you'd be walking into here in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, Jahmyr Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki. Just name them. Go down the list. Chase Brown, not a better situation in recent memory offensively than that. So guys would have been lining up at the door. I don't know if that's still the case. And all those guys are still here, right? Joe Burrow, because now we're seeing how big of a catastrophe the rest of the roster is. We'd still be a coveted spot for certain offensive minds. It's not very often that you'd be able to take over a head coach as a head coach of a team that has that quarterback. I mean, when was the last time that we've seen an elite quarterback get a new head football coach?
Herbert?
Yeah, Justin Herbert with Jim Harbaugh, Mike LaFleur with Aaron Rodgers, and even Aaron Rodgers was 30. We'd be at the prime of Joe Burrow's career. So it'd still be a coveted spot, but it's certainly more damaged goods than it was last January. Undoubtedly. So you just got to wonder that. If you talk to coaches, they'll tell you, hey, where you take your job, make sure it's a hit. Because if you start, Hugh Jackson was one of the highest sought-after offensive coordinators when he took the job in Cleveland. Because he had taken Andy Dalton and made him look like an MVP candidate. He took over the Cleveland Browns, and it was a dumpster fire. Now Hugh Jackson can't get a job anywhere. Anywhere. So you just got to remember that. These guys are taking major risk. And while being able to coach Joe Burrow is huge, I just don't think that there's going to be – it's still going to be a coveted position for certain offensive coordinators. I just think I don't think you can argue that the line will be shorter than it was if the job was open last January. Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And, you also have to question, do you want to bring in an offensive guy? I think this league is trending in that direction, has been for the past several years, and I think it's the right decision to bring in an offensive guy. But a guy like Jeff Hafley, who's done some good things as the DC with Green Bay, has head coaching experience in college, do you bring him in, right? Because it's the defense, clearly, that, still is struggling. Obviously, everyone's banging on the offense right now. But if you make a change at head coach, that's basically you saying that, we need to completely restart this whole thing. And when you do that after having just paid Joe Burrow, Jahmyr Chase, and T. Higgins top-of-the-line money, it's not exactly the right time to be going through a total change in philosophy, which is why I would be hesitant to make that move. But if you don't win another game for the rest of the year, then you have to. There's still a lot of games to be played. I know none of us are really fired up about all these games that are going to be played, but we got to figure out where this team is at. If they only win one or two more games, yeah. But if they find a way to be around 500 with no Joe Burrow, then you're probably running it back with the same guys and trying again. So bottom line, lots of football left. They're not going to make a rash decision and fire him now, right? Mike Brown, the Blackburn family, they're going to let him, play this out a little bit and see where we're at. But obviously very dark days here at the moment.
It's patience in professional sports is normally rewarded in some capacity. You look at some of these teams in the NFL and baseball and basketball and college football, they just keep churning it out. Look at the dumpster fires and with the New York Giants, the New York Jets, all these teams that just come continuously. Chicago Bears, let's just get somebody out, turn it out. We'll hit on one eventually, but they don't give maybe a good coach time to succeed. And the Bengals, for the most part, have been patient. And Zac Taylor's had his success. But I don't know. It's just it's pretty clear that even he's got to be the least respected conference championship coach in the last decade.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, there was, surveys around the league where people around the league, executives, assistant coaches are voting on who are the best play callers, and Zac Taylor didn't get a single vote. And that's telling. And I think you see that with the lack of creativity of the Cincinnati team on offense. And you've seen that over the past couple of years as well. This isn't something new For so long, this team has been reliant on the spectacular from Joe Burrow, turning something into nothing. When's the last time the Bengals schemed up something great and you had a guy running wide open because it was a great scheme? Right, not Jahmyr Chase making an absurd double move where he just completely jukes out the corner, something that's coaching where you go, wow, that was an incredible play, and they got a guy wide open. We talked about it with Green Bay. LaFleur seemingly does that every single week. When's the last time you've really seen that from Zac Taylor? You haven't.
Yeah, he's pretty clearly the worst coach that has won a conference championship in the last 10 years that I can think off the top of my head. Now, I understand here in the AFC, it's kind of been the same guy over and over again. It's been the same two guys, but Bill Belichick and Andy Reid with a Zac Taylor sprinkled in there as well. That's a high bar, right? Winning a conference championship. So let's not act like that's just like saying he's the worst coach in the league. That's a pretty good bar, but it's pretty clear that this team there's definitely pieces missing. Whether it be Duke Tobin, Zac Taylor, whoever's fault, I still hold that this team is probably 2 years away, two good drafts away. Like, I don't see this team as a true contender the way they were back in 2022, where they went in 2023 before Joe Burrow got hurt. And I think it's going to take some, like, 4 or 5 significant pieces in the starting 22 to get there. And then you start minimizing the timeline of like, okay, well, we've got 4 years left of Joe, perceive unless we extend him again, which who knows what's going to happen when we get to the end of that. Joe probably is going to want to go elsewhere because why wouldn't he? So if you got 2 years and it just shrinks down. The window's my career. That window is getting smaller and smaller. It's not quite a keyhole yet, but it's just not good. And the worst thing that can happen, I'll say this, the worst thing that can happen is what is most likely to happen. There's 3 paths going forward for the rest of this season. They play the Packers this week, and they turn around and play the Pittsburgh Steelers before they play 2 easier games. But even those easier games, if you're talking about, we'll be favored against the Jets at home? Will we be favored against the Chicago Bears at home? No. We'll probably be like 2-point dogs, or like it'll be right around there. So there's 3 paths forward. There's one in which we are the worst team in football, and we go 2-15, 3-14, 4-13, whatever it is, and we got a top 5 pick. That's one path. We got the other path, which is this team starts to figure some things out, and they sneak one of these next 2 games, and things kind of get a little exciting, and we beat the Jets and the Bears, and all of a sudden we're starting talking about the timeline of Joe Burrow's return, and like, can we do this? Can we hold water? The Baltimore Ravens, their season's done. Lamar Jackson's out. Can we get 2 wins against the Baltimore Ravens? The Bears still look terrible. Oh, we beat the Steelers for a game. Now we can win the AFC North. Like, things start getting really exciting really fast. Or there's the third, which is by far the most likely scenario, which is this team continues on playing Jake Browning. This team continues on running the same offense. Zac Taylor's still the head coach. They win 6, 7 games. I hung out with my nephews this weekend, so I heard that a lot. 6 or 7 games. And we're going to get the 11th overall pick in the draft, and we're just going to run it all back. And the most likely scenario, by the way, is the worst scenario. It's the worst scenario, to where we don't have a clear path forward, whether it be this team's still competitive, this team's still good, we don't have to hope for a million things to go our way to be competitive next year, good, or all right, this team's not very good, let's kind of do a soft rebuild, let's hopefully Joe Burrow's healthy, we can get some offensive line help, we can get some defense help, and try again in the draft, and we'll have high draft picks, and maybe we'll get a little more draft capital if we trade like that way also would be good. Not as good, but good, because at least you have a path. 6, 7 wins, it's just fog in front of you. It's just fog. You don't know what it is. And it's a lot of this. It's a lot of just praying and hoping. Praying and hoping that our elite quarterback's healthy. Praying and hoping that we actually hit on draft picks for the first time in 5 years. Praying and hoping that guys that we've hit on in previous or guys that we drafted in previous years figure it out, praying and hoping that Zac Taylor keeps this team together and we don't start having locker room clashes with our wide receivers and all the big personalities praying and hoping. It's just a lot of praying and hoping. It's just a lot of it. And I don't want it. I want no part of it. What's the worst path forward? That one? 6 and 7 wins? 6, 7.
Well, worst path forward is that Joe Burrow doesn't want to be here anymore, to be honest with you. And I don't think we're nearing that point, right? His boys, they just got signed, right? Like it or not, we're going to be seeing more of this over the next couple of years, right? Now, hopefully Nine's healthy, and then we're winning games, right? But this is going to be a team that their money is dedicated to their wide receivers. Their money is dedicated to the offensive side of the football, and they're going to have to find ways to hit in the draft when it comes to offensive line and perhaps get bottom-of-the-line free agents on the offensive line. And that's just kind of the path forward with how Cincinnati opted to make their decisions with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jahmyr Chase. And for the record, I believed at the time that those were the right decisions. I still stand by that. All right, we're not having all these conversations if Joe Burrow is out there. We're not, right? We can sit here and say, oh, this team, they've got all types of issues. The coach stinks, whatever. All true. But if number 9's out there, we're still very much in it. Nobody's thinking about firing everybody, and it's going to be a complete, rebuild. Nobody's thinking that if Joe Burrow's out there. That's just the reality of the situation. So worst case scenario for me is that, well, obviously Joe Burrow continues to get hurt. That would be one. And that Joe Burrow no longer wants to be here, and that he wants out. And then this team is cooked. But as long as he's here, they have a chance. Obviously, he's not here right now this season. We'll see what they're able to do over the course of the next several weeks. But if Joe, I know we keep saying it, but
it's so funny, the narrative around Joe, and how it continues to shift. He goes to the Super Bowl. They're like, yeah, he's unbelievable, right? He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then it was, well, he only did it because of Evan McPherson hitting some kicks. And by the way, the hitting some kicks narrative better start happening with Baker Mayfield. And I love Baker Mayfield down there in Tampa, but every single game they've won on a field goal. He's a great guy to watch. But he's like, Joe was nothing. He didn't play well in the postseason. That defense carried him. That defense that was, I think, ranked 17th in the league carried him. And Evan McPherson carried him. And then it was, Joe Burrow, he gets it right, but he's just not, can't win, right? He doesn't make the game-winning plays. That was the narrative last year, if you recall, because he had a fumble against the Chiefs and because he didn't move the ball against the Ravens in overtime. That was a serious narrative being perpetrated on sports talk radio. And now it's the rightful narrative, which is, Joe Burrow elevates this entire team, and he might be the best player in the league because of what he's able to do with this team that looks absolutely incompetent without him. Final 2 minutes of the show. I got buried for my 6'7" joke. Do you have any cousins, young cousins or anything
Nope.
like that? I have. I went to Saturday off. I went to Halloween haunts with my cousins and my nephews.
How was that?
It was. He was one of my cousins, a freshman in high school, and my nephews are in 7th and 5th grade. It was a blast, but they just hit me with middle-age or teenage lingo the entire time, preteen lingo. They did the 6'7" joke. One of my nephews called me, said I had no motion.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean when someone says I ain't got no motion?
You got no, you got no swag.
I got no game?
Yeah.
Got no game?
Yeah.
He's like, you ain't got no motion. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then my 14-year-old cousin just kept saying big dog. I guess that's what they're saying in high school. Which I do that with you.
Right.
Before, but it was like, hey, big dog. Like it was like every single sentence was like instead of bro or dude, it was big dog. So it was fun, though. I ain't got no motion, apparently. Stone?
Yep.
You got an hour of talk.
Yep.
Like I said before I started this show, I wasn't sure where it was going to go. I just knew I had a million things to say over the next hour, and maybe it wasn't coherent, but it was fun. I will not be on the show for the rest of this week. I will try and plan the show for the rest of this week. I'm going to get Trace on here. We tried to have a UC Bearcats guy, a Chatterbox Bearcats guy, on Friday. He got back to me after the show and said, yeah, just let me know anytime you need them. So I'll try to link up that. Were they in the top 25? Did they make any? They crack any in the top 25?
Not
Bearcats?
quite.
Okay,
Not
so they got votes.
I
right?
believe.
They got votes. I didn't see them in the top 25, but they had a big win over Iowa State. Dominated that win. You said you were going to take Iowa State. Did you take Iowa State?
I did. Yeah, it was best bet of the weekend. That didn't work out.
That was your best bet of the weekend.
We had 5 this week. That was one of them,
Yeah.
and that was one of the few that didn't work out. One of the many that didn't work out.
What were the other best bets?
Dang, you're really gonna do this to me then?
Yeah. Come on, if you're gonna put them out, we gotta
right,
keep them.
Yeah, no, we went 1-4 this week, Reed. Not good at all. We went 1-4 this week. We're under 500. We're in the loser side, but it's still early. Plenty of football ahead of us at this point. I mean, the Dolphins, they were up 17-0 and then lose to Carolina. I mean, what are we doing? Thought the Ravens would bounce back. That didn't end up happening at all. Let's not forget you at one point had the Ravens as the best team in the league, even as they were suffering.
Now,
I'm spinning it around on you.
When I'm auditing your takes,
Yeah.
you're spinning it on me. I was
Correct.
wrong. I think the 2 teams that I said were the best teams in the league were the Ravens, and who's the other team that doesn't look too good? Green Bay. Who still looks good, but I put them as number 1, and then they lost and tied their next 2 games. Go on with your picks.
We had the Bills and the Rams up there. They lost. We had the Chargers up there. They lost. So we're going to really have to redo our power rankings. But what else? I had UC that didn't work out. Oh, I had the Chargers. Yeah. Up 10-0 and lose.
Because we're not constricted to time here off the bench, and your show is at 11, but you can go a little over. There's no things, and we'll get to the Stone Shield show here in a second. This is the final take I'll have on the show before I leave. I have to work a board event down in Louisville, Kentucky all week. I won't be back for the rest of the week, as I mentioned earlier. But it's becoming clear to me, like when we look at past eras of the NFL, it seems like we always just like, oh, that was when the Cowboys were good. Oh, that was when the Patriots were good. Or, oh, hey, that was when the Chiefs were good. I hope when we look back at this era of the NFL, we talk about it as like the era of salvaged quarterbacks. Because I never remember this many quarterbacks not working where they first got drafted, going somewhere else, and being really good. Sam Darnold in the Seahawks, Baker Mayfield in Tampa. Help me out here. What are some other ones? There's Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. Geno Smith, we'll see with Geno Smith, but he obviously had previously salvaged his career. Mac Jones for the 49ers. And it's probably a two-part piece. One is because the league has never been more offensive friendly. And 2, it's because we pull the plug on quarterbacks so quickly now. We move past guys so quickly now that we don't give them time to flourish. 2 decades ago, you'd get like 3 or 4 years to be the starting quarterback. You don't get that anymore. You get basically 2 years. You get a year and a half. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But it is the era of salvage quarterbacks, so shout out to them. It is now the Stone Shield Show on here on Chatterbox Sports. See you guys next week.
right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. I am your host, Stone Shields, back here on a Monday, another week of the show, approaching that 1 month mark here at the Stone Shield Show. Appreciate everybody that hangs out with us live. And, of course, remember to check out the podcast if there's anything that you miss. Wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, you name it, it'll be up there shortly following the conclusion of our show. Also, plenty of segments that will go up on YouTube as well. Make sure you can check those out. We'll post them on Twitter there as well. So we're going to getting into more social media stuff here with the show. You'll find more clips and more segments. You got the podcast. So if you can't join us live, totally understand, obviously. 11 o'clock in the morning, people have jobs. People are working. I totally get that. But plenty of ways to get our content if you can't hang out with us live. But all the people hanging out with us live certainly appreciate you guys. Plenty to discuss on today's show. The Bengals are routed once again, 37-24. They lose at home to the Detroit Lions. And, the score doesn't seem like it's that bad. And you're like, he lost by 13, almost covered the spread there. Well, it was a lot uglier than the score would indicate. Lots of garbage time scores for Cincinnati, 21 points in the fourth quarter. It really was not as competitive as the final score would indicate, and that certainly is an issue, considering that means it's been, 3 weeks in a row that has been the case for the Cincinnati Bengals football team. So plenty to unpack about the game. We'll break through, what exactly transpired in the game, as we typically do, and then we'll have the conversation about what to do with Jake Browning and what to do with Zac Taylor. Jake Browning, obviously now, he was in the Jaguar game. He's able to get a win, which kind of was a lucky win, and then has played downright bad in these 3 games in which he has been the starter. Do the Bengals trade for somebody? Do they make a change at quarterback? We'll hear from Zac Taylor as well later in the show. He had some comments after the game that some people are frustrated with. Zac's in a tough spot, right? What do you want him to say at the podium? Is he just going to go up there and be like, yeah, we're cooked, we're in serious trouble, we're probably not going to win a game again? No, he's remaining optimistic here, trying to hold on some hope that this team's going to get turned around. He says he remains confident that the team will be able to get this turned around, says they can still win games with Jake Browning, but also open the door, or left the door open, I should say, to a potential change at the quarterback position, bringing in somebody else or perhaps starting somebody that is currently on the team right now. We'll hear from Zac later with a soundbite from today's show, and we'll talk Zac Taylor, we'll talk Jake Browning, we'll talk Cincinnati Bengals. In my opinion, the past 2 weeks, lots of things went wrong for this team at Denver and at Minnesota. Didn't play great in this game. Not saying everybody played winning football, but there were some guys that played winning football for this team yesterday, and Jake Browning and Zac Taylor certainly held them back. And those are the 2 guys that deserve lots of criticism. You've heard people that cover the team say that. You're going to be hearing that all day on Sports Talk Radio. Yeah, this team's not perfect. Yeah, they got holes in several spots. But the 2 people that deserve blame for what went wrong yesterday, Jake Browning and Zac Taylor. We will talk about that on today's show. But apart from the Bengals, great weekend of football, right? Started on Saturday. We'll go around college football. Plenty of games to touch on as it relates to that. Alabama looks good once again at home. They beat Vanderbilt. Miami had them at number 3, and they were going to remain at number 3, perhaps even jump Oregon at number 2. They look good. They beat Florida State. Penn State gets upset at UCLA. We'll talk about that game a little bit. And the Cincinnati Bearcats, calling it the biggest win of the Scott Satterfield era to this point. Certainly feels like that. Had a little field storming there at Nippert Stadium as they pull off a victory 38-30 against Iowa State, who was ranked 14 in the country at the time, and really impressed with how Cincinnati played football. And, we talked about it kind of last week, like, if they win this game, maybe we'll have some reason to talk about Cincinnati Bearcat football on the show, considering what's going down with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think we're at that spot right now with the UC Bearcats. An impressive win, a big win for them. We'll spend a little time talking about that. Another dominant victory for Ohio State as they just demolish Minnesota. Plenty of upsets around the National Football League as well. We do our power rankings every week. We will do that on tomorrow's show after the Monday Night Football game tonight. Eagles lose, first loss of the year. We're going to have a change at the top. We will see. The Bills lose, had them at 2. They lose to the Patriots. This feels like a Vrabel type of win, right, on the road. Primetime game, finds a way to get the victory. Chargers lose. Rams, of course, lost on Thursday Night Football, as we talked about. So we'll break down some of those games on today's show as well. So make sure you stick around throughout the entirety of today's show. Plenty of stuff to talk about. Also, MLB playoffs going on right now. People kind of forget during Football Saturday, Football Sunday, but plenty to discuss as it relates to Major League Baseball. this week, as there are several games, and 2, of course, tonight in the National League. But let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals. They lose 37-24 against the Detroit Lions, and as I mentioned at the top, certainly was not as close as that score would indicate. Lots of things went wrong for this Bengals football team. We'll talk about Jake Browning in a second, but I want to start with the defense. I thought the defense played good enough to win this game. And I said this on Off the Bench. You can say what you want about the Minnesota game and the Denver game. You can play the what-if game in your mind all you want. Look, nobody likes playing the what-if game, but you can't really help it, right? How would this team have played over these last 3 games had Joe Burrow been out there and been the quarterback? I don't know if they beat Denver or Minnesota, right? I would think that if you don't have those fumbles, you're able to beat Minnesota. But with all those fumbles, can you really beat Minnesota even with Joe Burrow? I don't know. And lots of things went wrong for you, offense, defense, special teams. Against Denver, does Joe Burrow propel you over the top in what was a completely lopsided game on Monday Night Football? But I am convicted of one thing, and that is Joe Burrow would have won this game for Cincinnati yesterday. The defense, they played all right, as I mentioned. But that first drive, for whatever reason, the opponent gets the football, they go down the field and score. That's happened in, all but one game for Cincinnati at this point. Obviously, that has to get cleaned up. So right when that happens, you're thinking, we're getting blitzed. We're getting ambushed again, and here we go against this prolific Lions offense. But the Bengals defense hung in there. Got to give them credit for that. Trey Hendrickson, he looks like one of the few guys that actually care on this team. He was able to get to the quarterback, had a strip sack of Jared Goff for the record. I thought that was lucky. In my book, that's an incomplete pass, but hey, Bengals got it. And, it was a turnover for them in a critical spot, and they responded by going 3 and out, which, is kind of a theme there, certainly, in the first half when they weren't throwing it to the other team, which we'll talk about in a second. But I thought the defense really hung in there. It's a really good Lions offense. They don't obviously have Ben Johnson calling the shots for them anymore offensively, but they've got guys everywhere. That 2-headed monster in the backfield of Montgomery and, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs. Unbelievable. Best tandem in the league. Bengals held them to 118, yards on the ground, which is that great? No. But if you would have went in that game and said, yeah, they're going to rush for 118 yards, I'd say, yeah, sign me up. We'll take our chances with that. And the Bengals did a decent job there. Obviously, the weaponry that Detroit has with Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. The Bengals had Joseph Osai on Sam Laporta there on that first drive. I'm not sure how, that is something that you think is a good idea, right, if you're Al Golden, that Bengals defense. Haven't heard his comments on that, but that should never happen. You should never have an edge rusher on a tight end. That's one of the most athletic tight ends in the National Football League. Not exactly sure what was going on with that. And then the very following drive, you saw Cam Sample, who's also an edge rusher out there trying to defend Sam Laporta. That's a battle that you're going to lose 10 times out of 10, and I don't think you should be surprised when that goes as bad as it did. But beyond that, you made some plays, right? You had some negative plays. You were able to cause some disruption there along the line of scrimmage, right? TJ Slayton, you could argue he had his best game as a Cincinnati Bengal. Miles Murphy had another sack in the game, right? That certainly was positive. Trey Hendrickson played really well in the game. Talked about him kind of being a key to victory for this Bengals team, really needing him to step up and do some good things for this football team, and he was able to do that in the game as he had 2 sacks. Also, Chris Jenkins Jr. had a tackle for a loss. He's seemingly coming along nicely, and you were able to hang in there in the secondary, right? You're outmatched there. I think we all understand that, but Dax Hill, I thought, hung in there. And, Turner and Newton, they weren't great, but they hung in there. And they gave yourself a chance as a team to win that football game. You were sitting there at halftime, and you look up at the score, and it was only 14-3. And you had an opportunity to possess the football to begin the second half. And that's obviously what Cincinnati did. And you're sitting there going, wow, how is this team even in a spot where they can win this football game? It was a complete head-scratcher, to be completely honest with you. And then, of course, they respond in the second half by Jake Browning throwing a horrible interception right there to begin the drive. And that kind of felt like, it was only 14-3 at the time. But that when he threw that pick, it was just like, you can't do that against a team like the Detroit Lions. There's frankly not many teams you can do that against in the National Football League. The Lions certainly not one of them. And then you're sitting there going, well, now you're in a tough spot as they go down and score. And next thing you know, after that, it's 28-3, and then that's pretty much it at that point. But let's have the Jake Browning conversation here. There were some built-in excuses for him against the Minnesota Vikings and the Denver Broncos. There was the fumbles on top of the interceptions in the Minnesota game. It was the fact that it was a hostile environment on the road. Brian Flores, who might be the best defensive coordinator in the National Football League, it was his first start. Yeah, he played against Jacksonville, but it was his first time being the guy. And the Bengals certainly didn't have the better coaches in that game. O'Connell and Flores completely outcoached Taylor and company in that football game. So that was kind of like, we'll give him a break. And then Monday Night Football comes around, right? Island game, everybody's watching on ESPN, and that was just a complete disaster for Jake Browning as he wasn't able to get anything going for this Bengals team offensively. And the knock on him that game was, well, he's just being too conservative. He's not trying to push the football down the football field. You had him being a little bit reckless and too aggressive against Jacksonville and against Minnesota, and then he kind of backed off against Denver, and then he went back to his reckless nature here in this game against the Detroit Lions. All 3 interceptions were horrible. All right, and 2 of them, he's standing in his own end zone when he's throwing them. You absolutely cannot have that in the National Football League. The first one, I would want to throw it in a one-on-one situation to Jahmyr Chase as well. But as a quarterback, that cannot go to the field. That has to be either in Chase's hands or out of bounds, especially when you're deep back in your own territory like that. I don't know what exactly he was doing in that spot. Again, this is early in the game. You don't need to be that reckless in this situation. Were you trailing? Yes, and that certainly provides some difficulty there for you as a football team because you're already behind the 8 ball. You go down and you see the Detroit Lions go down the field, immediately score, and you're sitting there already kind of on your heels, and then you're backed up in your own territory. Field position certainly was an issue in this game. Zac Taylor alluded to that after the game, basically saying, there in the beginning, it's just, we were constantly backed up, and that didn't really allow us to get anything going. But the first one, absolutely reckless, can't have it. And then the second one, right, shortly after that, where you're also in your own end zone, and you basically just say, whatever, and just try to throw it up to Jahmyr. It's basically triple coverage. And again, I get wanting to force the ball to him, wanting to, give him an opportunity to make a play. You saw that with Joe Burrow a lot. Things would break down. Let's just put it in the area of 1 and see what he can do. But the thing that Joe Burrow does is he goes, let me either give 1 an opportunity to make a play or it's going to be an incompletion. Not, let me allow 1 to have an opportunity to make a play or it's going to be an interception. That's obviously a very big difference, and that's something that Cincinnati and Jake Browning certainly struggled with in this game. And then the third one, that's another thing about the interceptions too. They all were horrible, but they all continuously got a little bit worse each time. As I mentioned earlier, 14-3. All right, you're in a spot here. You get the ball. Let's go down. Let's at least kick a field goal, make it 14-6. Shoot, we score a touchdown. It's 14-10. We're right back in this thing, and immediately throw the interception. I have no idea. I've watched it several times. I have no idea what he thought he was doing or was trying to accomplish there on that play. Just a completely boneheaded mistake there from Jake Browning. You turn the ball over that many times, 3 interceptions against a team of that caliber on the Detroit Lions, and you're going to lose the football game, especially with backups, or especially with your backup quarterback being the guy that's the trigger man for you, and that's what Cincinnati has here with Jake Browning. There are just too many holes on this team to overcome that, right? And we saw that with Joe Burrow. It's becoming more and more evident each and every week just how spectacular Joe Burrow is at playing the position because he was able to overcome bad offensive line. I mean, literally, you could probably count on your hand. There's a handful of guys in the history of the game that can play competent winning football with a bad offensive line. Joe Burrow is one of them. Jake Browning certainly is not. Don't want to give him a pass because he was bad, but he clearly doesn't trust his offensive line. He's got happy feet in the pocket. He's not trusting what he's seeing. He's panicking back there because he knows he doesn't have a lot of time, and you're seeing him force some throws. The offensive line was bad again in the game, right? Now, with Joe Burrow, he's able to overcome that. Jake Browning can't overcome that, and it led to really, really bad play. I mean, even at the end, the safety were probably out of it at that point. Definitely probably out of it at that point. But Dylan Fairchild, I mean, what are you doing? He just looks left, and the guy runs right by him. I mean, you can't do that as a guard, especially backed up in your own territory with a quarterback in the end zone. Ends up being a safety. Obviously not very good. Orlando Brown Jr., guy stinks. All right, we've said it for several weeks here on the show, and that's very disappointing considering how much money you have paid him and considering how good he played last year when he was healthy. He was really, really good at left tackle when he was healthy last year. Orlando Brown Jr. is downright awful. I mean, you can't bench him because you're paying him so much money, and who the heck are you going to put in over him? But he's not playing winning football by any stretch. Amarius Mims, he continues to struggle. He's supposed to be the bright spot of your offensive line. He hasn't been great. And Ted Karras, of course, penalties, false starts. All right, this is supposed to be a veteran guy that knows what he's doing and can go out there and play winning football for you. Ted Karras has clearly struggled in that spot there as well, and that has hurt the Bengals offense, and that has hurt Jake Browning. But when you have a quarterback that stinks and you have an offensive line that stinks, it doesn't matter how good your receivers are and how much money you're paying them. You're going to struggle a lot as a football team as well, and that's certainly something that Cincinnati has done over the course of these past few weeks. Now the question becomes, what do you do with Jake Browning? Can you afford to roll him out there again, especially against a Green Bay Packer team in Lambeau Field. Can you do that? All right, and then a short week against Pittsburgh after that. Is that something that you can afford to do? Zac Taylor, after the game, spoke about Jake Browning, the issues that he had, and whether or not Cincinnati can win with Jake Browning still the quarterback. Let's take a listen as it relates to what Zac Taylor said after the game.
Do you still believe in Jake going forward as your starter?
I do. I of course, after a game like that, we're going to look at all personnel to make sure we're doing the right thing. So I won't shy away from that because it's a very fair question after the amount of turnovers we have. But to say that I don't think Jake can win games for us, I believe Jake can win games for us. I do. And we'll just continue to look at everything we can personnel-wise.
Very clear there from Zac Taylor that he was kind of toeing the line there a little bit, right? Understanding that Jake Browning, he still believes in him, has belief in him, but he left the door open to a possible personnel change. And that's something that we talked about last week. We talked about it with Reed Mouse even before that about Andy Dalton. Last week we spent time on the show entertaining the thought of trading for Russell Wilson. Now it is getting late early for this Bengals team. If you made a move like this right when Joe Burrow went down, now you can be in a spot where you could start somebody like Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston in this game against Green Bay. You didn't make the move. You waited, which I'll be the first to admit. I was fine waiting for at least a little bit. All right. Would I have made a move before the Detroit game? Probably. But now you're in a spot, you're 2-3, and clearly Jake Browning is not the guy for you. Now, he may have bought himself some time with his performance in the fourth quarter, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be completely honest with you. All right. The Lions, the game won at that point. They're totally banged up in their secondary. By the way, Trey Flowers was out there playing cornerback for them. I mean, that guy couldn't cover for us a couple of years ago. The fact he was out there in 2025 in a football game, he got signed off the street on a Tuesday, I think, last week. Disaster. Joe Burrow would have absolutely lit those boys up in the secondary for Detroit. But what do you do? That's the question that we're certainly asking ourselves here and that people all around the city are going to be asking themselves. The touchdowns in the fourth quarter were positive, right? 3 drives, 3 touchdowns. Jahmyr had 2 of them. The one is just Jahmyr. The last Jahmyr one is just him, just a nasty route. The out and up, just absolutely cooking that guy. Credit to Browning, he made the throw, but pretty much every quarterback in the NFL, starter or backup, is capable of making that throw. And then the first one to Jahmyr, that was obviously the play of the day for Jake Browning. Threw it up in traffic, as he typically does, but that time he put it only in a spot where Jahmyr could catch it, and Jahmyr, you know, how the toe drag, how that second leg just kind of went limp as he was able to get that in, gets the first foot down. Incredible play from Jahmyr Chase, and hopefully that can, you know, build some confidence for this team, because that showed everybody, oh yeah, Jahmyr Chase, he's still Jahmyr Chase, right? This guy was the Triple Crown guy last year, right, with Joe Burrow at the helm, unbelievable football player. Oh yeah, he can still play. And, you know, that was probably positive for Cincinnati that we saw that. But is that going to buy Jake Browning more time? I don't know. I mean, Zac Taylor's seeing that. He might go, well, you know, is anybody else going to give us a better opportunity than Jake Browning to win football games? And the honest answer is, as it relates to the guys on this roster, is no. All right? Can Brett Rippon play better football than Jake Browning? No. He can't. Can Sean Clifford? God, no. Would be a great, you know, local story, right? Sean Clifford gets an opportunity. He can't play better than Jake Browning. Mike White's the only guy where you even think, but this was a guy that was out of football before you signed him, because he began to prove that he wasn't good enough to be a backup, so he was out of football. The only reason that you would even have any confidence in Mike White mainly is because of what he did against you a couple of years ago when he was quarterbacking the New York Jets. He certainly has the most experience and has had the most success playing, but he wasn't even the backup yesterday, right? That was still Brett Rippon. So the Bengals right now, I'm sure they're in Paycor Stadium as we're sitting here at 11:25 in the morning, and they better be doing their due diligence. And I bet they are. I bet they're sitting there going, okay, Kirk Cousins, all right, the contract's a mess. Can Atlanta perhaps, you know, eat some of this? Kirk Cousins is the one guy where I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need that. And mainly, 1, the contract, but 2, behind this offensive line, Kirk Cousins is cooked behind this offensive line. That's just the reality of the situation. Jake Browning, can he move as well as Joe Burrow? Absolutely not, but he can move a little bit. Kirk Cousins can't move at all. The 2 Giants guys that we've talked about, Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. I would try to trade for Jameis Winston. I would do that right now. All right. Obviously, you're running out of leverage, right? Giants can ask for more now at this point because they understand how desperate you are and how bad of a situation you're in with Jake Browning. But would I give a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick for Jameis Winston? I would. All right. He would make the team more watchable, that's for sure. He would be more entertaining. All right. which I think the organization would appreciate as it relates to putting some actual Bengals fans in the seats of your stadium. That would certainly help. But he's a gunslinger, right? And that could be fun, him chucking the ball down the field to T. Higgins and Jahmyr Chase. If you sat there and said, do you think Jameis Winston can play more winning football than Jake Browning? Yes, I do. Even coming in, learning a new system, I believe Jameis Winston could do that. But Jameis Winston also throws the ball to the other team too. All right? Jameis Winston, if he was the starter here in Cincinnati, he would still throw interceptions. You bet your bottom dollar on that. So there isn't a perfect situation. But I think at this point, I don't know if you can afford continuing to run it back with Jake Browning based on what you saw. And there's no reason to be optimistic that's going to change here against Green Bay. You're 14.5-point underdogs in an NFL football game. I'm not going to say it's unprecedented, but that doesn't happen in the NFL. This isn't college. 14.5 points in an NFL game, that's absurd. Absolutely absurd. Again, it's against one of the best teams in football in Green Bay, so it's tough. And you played Detroit last week. Tough. Right? These aren't layups that you're missing, right? I mean, Minnesota, Denver, fringe playoff teams. Denver just knocked off the best team in the NFL, right? Detroit, they're a playoff team. Green Bay is going to be a playoff team. So you're not playing a bunch of bums and losing. You're playing good teams, but it's the fact that it hasn't been competitive at all, which is the reason why this is an issue. But the Bengals should be doing their due diligence on these guys. We mentioned Derek Carr as a guy as well. Check on him. What's he doing? Hey, how you doing? When's the last time you picked up a football? Hey, how would you like to throw to Jahmyr Chase and T? Do you got interest? All right, come on over here to Cincinnati. That should be something that this team is trying to work through at this point. But he may have bought him some time with his performance in the fourth quarter. I don't know if anyone else, like Brett Rippon, if he came in and did that, I don't think he could do that, to be honest with you. Brett Rippon in that spot. I don't think he could come in and do that, what Jake Browning was able to do. And it also shows the guts of Jake Browning, right? The fact that he was getting booed every time he was coming on and coming off the field and still was able to hang in there and provide that kind of performance in the fourth quarter. I get the Lions weren't playing the same kind of way in the fourth, but he does deserve some credit for that. And that is something that I admire and can appreciate, that he was continuing to fight when the whole city had turned on him and he was playing awful football to that point. But he got it together and he was able to finish the game strong. They scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, and he may have bought himself some more time as the starting quarterback of this team. But, I mean, now the question, if you want to look, we'll talk about Zac Taylor here in a second, but if you want to look further into the future, you're sitting here with Jake Browning going, we can't trust this guy to come back and be Joe Burrow's backup next year. You got to evaluate that position. All right, that we all thought that, we were good with the backup quarterback. Jake Browning was here, and, obviously you didn't want him to ever play when Joe Burrow was out, but this team could hang in there, right? He was talked about as one of the best, if not the best, backup in the National Football League, and he looks like one of the worst. He doesn't even look like he's capable of being a backup here at this point. So regardless of what happens over the course of the next couple of weeks, you got to reevaluate that position, all right? And I think it is time, when it relates to Joe Burrow, look, there have been people that have come on at this company and have said some crazy things as it relates to Joe Burrow. The Bengals should not move Joe Burrow. That is absolutely ridiculous. The fact I even have to say that is, quite frankly, ridiculous. Joe Burrow is the face of this organization, and I hope he plays the rest of his career here. But if this continues to head in this direction, there's a real possibility that he might not want to, and that is downright scary to think about. Absolutely scary that Joe Burrow could consider not wanting to play for the Cincinnati Bengals. But I say all those things. I think it's okay to draft a quarterback in the 4th or 5th round. 1st or 2nd round, absolutely not. But draft a guy in the 4th or 5th round, have him in a spot where he's Joe Burrow's backup, and if Joe Burrow continues to get hurt, you feel decent about him having an opportunity to win games through. A guy that you draft in the 4th round that maybe some people view in the NFL could perhaps be a starter at some point, that kind of player. And I think that probably needs to happen this year. We'll talk about names down the line, right? College football, the quarterback situation, there's a lot of guys that people were like, oh, it's going to be a great quarterback class. And now some of those guys aren't on that list anymore, but it's still going to be a good quarterback class. But there's going to be other guys. That's a conversation for a different day. But I do think spending a 4th or 5th round pick on a quarterback in 2026 is something that Cincinnati should do. Because I don't know if Jake Browning can be the backup going forward based on the performance that he has put out there here to this point. Now, Zac Taylor. The performance of a football team when they get blown out is a direct reflection of their head coach. I've said that multiple times on the show. It does not look good for Zac Taylor. They didn't start fast, and they weren't creative again on offense. I think at this point it is just safe to say that they are incapable of doing that. We've talked at length, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. I get those are the best of the best. But never, ever Is there a spot where Zac Taylor can scheme up something and get an easy completion or get one of his playmakers in space? That never happens, even with Joe Burrow. Never happens. That's a problem. That's not good, especially as someone that is calling the plays. And Zac Taylor took ownership as I knew he would after the game. He said, "Put it on me." And it's really hard to hate Zac Taylor, right? All you people that are calling for his job and that absolutely hate him, well, that's one thing to call for his job, but there's a lot of people out there that absolutely hate him, and that, quite frankly, is disgusting. I don't know how you could hate Zac Taylor if you listen to hear him at the podium. Like, the guy's clearly doing his best, and he's clearly a great guy, but I get it. It's a results business, and his team has stunk. I get the frustration. You're totally allowed to be frustrated, but it's hard to hate Zac Taylor when he goes to the podium and he says the things that he says, and he's clearly a great guy, and he's doing the best he can, and it's clearly not working. So the frustration is fine, but the people out there that just hate him, I have an issue with that. But, I mean, at some point we're going to have to, reevaluate this thing. Is he the guy to lead this team? I know lots of people would say, "Stone, you're crazy for even saying it's a question." Absolutely not. He cannot lead this team, and you've been saying it for years. I hear you. I totally hear you. Unfortunately for him, it looks totally different without Joe Burrow. Is he a good enough head coach where he can win with a backup? It seems like the answer to that question is no, despite the fact he did it in 2023. Now it seems like the answer is no. If this was Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan's perfect example, right, what he's doing right now with Mac Jones. Is Mac Jones 10 times better at playing quarterback than Jake Browning? Yes, absolutely. But could Mac Jones win in Cincinnati with Zac Taylor? Probably not, to be honest with you. And clearly, without Joe Burrow, Zac Taylor has really, really struggled, and his team has really, really struggled. And they've looked unprepared, they've been undisciplined, and they're turning the football over. And it's a hot mess right now for Cincinnati. I don't think they shouldn't do anything brash. I'm not going to come on here and say they need to get rid of him. No. There's going to be some people that sit there and say, when that bye comes in a couple of weeks, if you still haven't won another game, maybe you get rid of him at that point. At this point, I think a midseason firing when you come into the season with Super Bowl aspirations and expectations, which, by the way, let's be very clear. I understand how bad the defense was last year. Bengals came into this season with Super Bowl aspirations and expectations with a healthy Joe Burrow, and clearly that's not the case, as they're one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the National Football League. But, I mean, these next few weeks are big for Zach. They're really big. Because, again, this is an ownership group, and Mike Brown and the Blackburn family, the last thing they want to do is fire him. All right? We remember how long Marvin Lewis was able to hang around, but Marvin Lewis didn't have those god-awful years, really, right? And this is trending in the direction of a gosh-awful year for the Cincinnati Bengals. Marvin Lewis, he would win games, then he'd get to the playoffs and lose. So there was reason to kind of, we'll let this guy hang around and continue to be the head coach. Well, if this goes in the way in which it's trending, which is a 3, 4, 5-win team, with Super Bowl aspirations coming into it, granted you lost your franchise, I understand that, but it's going to be time to have that conversation. Do we need to retool? I think, for the record, if the Bengals were to retool, I'm not going to sit there and say it was a mistake, but I think that puts you further away from having an opportunity to win a world championship and compete in the postseason, or even at this point get to the postseason. Why? Because you have a core in place. All right, there's clearly a philosophy and an identity that you adapted that you wanted to go with. And that was, we're going to score lots of points, we're going to spread it around, and we're going to use the best player in the game, Joe Burrow, and we're going to let him cook with his 2 of the top receivers in the National Football League, and T. Higgins and Jahmyr Chase, and we're going to pay them all, and we're going to draft and develop on defense, and we got a guy and a head coach that has been there and has had success in the postseason. That's your plan, all right? And then if you fire your coach, well, you still got the same guys because Burrow, Chase, and Higgins are all under contract, but then you have to adopt a new regime, and that really could put you behind. All right? But, again, playing both sides here, if you don't do that, and you're in a situation where you continue to lose football games, it's going to be hard to get the trust of the locker room and get the trust of the city if you just run it back with the same guys. You kind of saw that last year. You really struggled. You were 9-8, and you kind of just ran it back with a 9-8 group. And then your quarterback goes down, and it's like, the only reason we had 9 wins last year was because of our quarterback. So lots of decisions, discussions need to happen. We'll see. I want to be very clear here. I think Cincinnati should trade for a quarterback this week. All right, I think we should get a notification on our phone either today or tomorrow that Cincinnati is trading for fill in the blank. I would say Jameis Winston. You want to do Russ, that's fine. You want to sign Derek Carr off the street, fine. You want to somehow see if Joe Flacco is available from Cleveland, fine. But that should happen this week. Do you bench Jake Browning? Well, I mean, if you trade for somebody this week, they're not going to be ready to go Sunday in Lambeau. So I think, to me, that's kind of the last straw here, and then you fire out your new quarterback on a short week on Thursday night against Pittsburgh and see what you have. All right? Now, the division is still up for grabs, right? I mean, the Browns stink. They lost again, and the Ravens stink. They're just as bad as you are. Now, the response to that is, when Lamar comes back, he'll get some wins for him, and I believe that. And clearly the Ravens are a better organization with better coaching. Fair, but they have a worse record than you right now, right? And I don't think the Steelers are world beaters by any stretch of the imagination. They're going to lose some games too. You are what your record is. You're 2-3. If this Bengals team was 2-3 with Joe Burrow playing quarterback, there'd be a lot of people that would be optimistic, and rightfully so. But obviously that is not the situation here at this point. Bengals lose 37-24. But we'll continue to talk about them throughout the course of this week. Lots of bad as it relates to Jake Browning. I believe the majority of the blame should go on Jake Browning, and the rest of the blame should go on Zac Taylor. I don't think you were really in a spot where many other guys, I get it's a team sport, but when those two are as bad as they were in this game, head coach, quarterback, two most important spots, they deserve all that blame. Plenty to unpack the rest of the week as it relates to the defense and some of the more detailed things that transpired in that game. But that'll do it for our Bengals conversation today. 37-24, Cincinnati falls and drops to 2-3 on the season. And a home loss where, we're asked to go out there and stripe the jungle, and it was striped with blue. I don't think that was the plan for Cincinnati. Bags on the head, boos. I mean, it felt like Bengals from years ago before Joe Burrow was here, and that certainly was not a good feeling to watch that transpire on TV. All right, let's buzz around the rest of the National Football League. Plenty of great games in the National Football League, and we're not going to let the Bengals, completely ruin our love for football here. Some great things happened, and you're seeing a lot of balance in the league as a lot of the top-heavy teams, right, falling this week in the National Football League. We'll start with what happened across the pond. Vikings beat the Browns, which is big, by the way. I mean, nobody views Cleveland as a threat, but if Baltimore continues to lose, I think we're all just kind of waiting for Pittsburgh to falter here soon. The Browns losing is very noteworthy, and it also shows you that, wow, the Browns were able to, basically have control of that game for a long time, and the Bengals got completely blown out with Jake Browning. We were banging on Dylan Gabriel, saying he didn't have a shot, saying he wasn't going to be the guy. Hand up accountability. He played solid in the game. Do I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback? No, but I'll give him credit where credit is due. He had Cleveland in a spot where they could win that game, and he certainly, I think, put them in a better spot than Joe Flacco, and I think he deserves some credit for that. But Carson Wentz, able to find his playmakers late in that ball game. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, an impressive drive to end that game against a really good defense. And he was able to get it to his playmakers and give them a position to win late in that ballgame, and he was banged up there as well. And Vikings get that one 21-17. The Indianapolis Colts, there's always that one team that kind of surprises and shocks you a little bit, and I think Indianapolis is that team here in 2025. A huge win over Vegas, 40-6. Real quickly on Vegas, Tom Brady obviously is a part owner in the Las Vegas Raiders. He wanted nothing to do with Sam Darnold, and he wanted to go with Geno Smith. Dumb decision from Tom Brady. I think that Vegas team looks totally different if it's Sam Darnold running Chip Kelly's offense. Obviously, that is not what is transpiring right now. It is Geno Smith, and that's a massive mistake from Tom Brady and company. But the Colts, Daniel Jones looks like a really solid NFL quarterback, and we all kind of predicted that Lou Anarumo would land on his feet. He's got some more veteran guys on that defense. They're flying around making plays, and obviously he just kind of looks like a scapegoat now in Cincinnati at this point because he's doing great things for Indianapolis. Big-time win for them. I think they got to be favorites to win that South Division. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Speaking of the South Division, Houston Texans, they looked horrible, leading up to that game. They had a big win the week prior against Tennessee. I get that. But 44-10 against Baltimore. Did not see that one coming. I was here and I was expecting Baltimore to bounce back. I get it. I looked at the injury report. I knew all the guys that they were missing, but I thought Harbaugh was going to allow them to compete. And I thought the defense would improve a little bit, but that's a Houston offense that hasn't been able to do anything, hasn't been able to run the football, and they scored 44 points on the Baltimore Ravens. It's crazy how far they have fallen. You think about the Ravens, you think about Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, guys flying around making plays, Terrell Suggs. Those guys obviously haven't played in quite some time, but that kind of mentality and that culture still has kind of carried over in recent years, and this year it's completely gone because that might be the worst defense in the National Football League, which saying that for a Baltimore Raven AFC North football team is absolutely wild. But Ravens get blown out, and they're in serious trouble. You could say they're in worse trouble than the Bengals. Obviously, Lamar is probably going to come back at some point over the course of the next couple of weeks, but this is very noteworthy. Obviously, people are down on the Bengals, and you should be. They're one of the worst teams in pro football right now. But if the team that we all thought was a lock to win the division is going to continue to have a worse record than you, that's very noteworthy, because I think it's only a matter of time before Pittsburgh starts to, really drop off and just kind of hang around 500. Bengals obviously one game under 500. Is there much optimism that they can increase that? No, right? I totally get that, but 2-3 right now, and if the division continues to stink, there's opportunity there, especially as it relates to somebody making his return this winter. He'll come back if he's healthy and they still have a chance, but, obviously not much reason to be optimistic as it relates to that here at this point. Saints pick up their first win, 26-14 against the Giants. You saw Dart look good at times. You saw him look like a rookie at times. Had the interceptions, on fourth down, having to, try to throw it up, make a play. I don't think he deserves a lot of criticism for that. Scadaboo, the rookie, had the big fumble for them. Credit to Kellen Moore. He picks up his first win. Spencer Rattler was solid in the game, and, he allowed them an opportunity to win that football game. And I think a lot of people, myself included, coming in the year said the Saints are the worst team in football. Would the Bengals beat the Saints right now? I don't know. That remains to be seen. Well, I guess it won't be seen because they're not on the schedule, but we can continue to ponder that. Broncos beat the Eagles 21-17. Philadelphia was undefeated at that point, but you were looking at the statistics and some of the issues that they had, and the fact that they were winning games was, I'm not going to say it was a miracle, but they kind of were winning some games when they probably could have been losing some games. They had a big lead in this game, felt like they had dominated it early, but credit to Sean Payton and Bo Nix. Sean Payton's unbelievable. He pushed all the right buttons. He goes for 2 in that spot instead of tying the game, gives them an 18-17 lead at the time, really applies pressure to them on the road, and that's a big-time win for Denver. So I guess that makes Cincinnati's loss last week look a little bit better because they just knocked off the team that most people viewed as the best team in professional football. It's a huge win for Denver. They're starting to look like a playoff team, and the Eagles, they'll bounce back. They'll be just fine. No worries about them. How about Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys? No CeeDee Lamb. No Micah Parsons. The weaponry that he has is, Flournoy, the guy he's thrown to. Pickens only had a couple of catches. The tight end Ferguson, Schoonmaker. The guys he's throwing to are not elite by any stretch of the imagination. And Dak Prescott is playing MVP caliber football at this point. As we know with the MVP award, if your team doesn't make the playoffs and your team stinks, you're not going to win it. But Dak Prescott is playing the position at an elite level. I get he's playing the Jets, who, by the way, might be worse than the Bengals. We'll find out in a couple of weeks there in that game. But Dak Prescott's playing unbelievable. Big win from Dallas on the road, 37-22. Panthers beat the Dolphins. Had the Dolphins as one of the best bets of the weekend. Obviously, that did not go well for us as we drop under 500 on that, but it's a long season. Plenty of opportunity for us to bounce back as it relates to best bets of the weekend there. But Dolphins dominating that game, 17-0 on the road. Tua looked great, and then the Panthers came storming back. Had some bad turnovers there, a bad interception from Bryce Young, a bad fumble from Bryce Young. But the key to that game was the ground game. Rico Dowdle was unbelievable in the game. Panthers rushed for 229 yards, and the Dolphins rushed for 19 yards. Dolphins didn't even turn the football over, and they allowed Carolina to storm back in that game and win it. Heartbreaking loss for the best bets of the weekend, and that's a big-time loss for McDaniel because there, when he's up 17-0, you're going, all right, they're going to get a win here on the road, pick up another win, back-to-back wins, and they might be all right as far as him keeping his job. They lose to Carolina. That obviously is a serious issue for them. Game of the weekend, Buccaneers and Seahawks. Mentioned Sam Darnold earlier. Brady could have had him in Vegas, didn't want him. Massive mistake. Seahawks certainly fired up to have him. He's terrific, and Baker Mayfield is terrific as well. 38-35, they get the win. Emeka Egbuka looks like he's going to win Rookie of the Year. My concern coming into the year wasn't a concern, but I was like, yeah, Emeka's going to be great, but Cam Ward's probably going to be good enough to win the award. Titans pick up their first win. We'll touch on them in a second. But Emeka Egbuka is unbelievable for them. And what he's been able to do without Mike Evans is huge there as well. It's one thing to be great with Mike Evans out on the field with you. That's not what you're getting right now with Mike Evans being sidelined. Egbuka has been terrific. Baker and the Buccaneers obviously are winning these. They're getting these game-winning drives, kicking these game-winning field goals. They're going to be up even more on my power rankings despite the fact that, they're winning in this kind of fashion. But they're winning football games. And it doesn't feel like Kansas City last year where they're just kind of getting lucky and, winning these one-score games. Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay are really going out there and grabbing the bull by the horns and executing late in the game. It's been terrific to see. And with teams faltering at the top of the NFL, you got to view Tampa Bay as one of the best teams in the league. Going to Seattle and winning in that environment, you're a Florida team going all the way to Seattle and playing that game. They deserve a lot of credit. Baker Mayfield should be getting a little MVP buzz because he's been doing terrific things for Tampa Bay. What a fun team to watch. Game of the weekend. Titans get their first win, 22-21 over the Cardinals. I saw some of the clips of that game. Just a complete craziness, right? If you're a Cardinal fan, I don't know how you don't throw your TV or your remote through your television set because that was just a complete collapse, complete meltdown. Opportunity to have the game-clinching touchdown. You fumble it because you're getting ready to celebrate before you cross. You have the interception, and then that guy fumbles, and it's recovered in the end zone by Tennessee. That's a touchdown. The snap off Kyler's face acts like a bomb hit him in the face. Just awful game for Arizona. But credit to Callahan, picking up his first win of the year. Cam Ward gets his first win. Congratulations to them, 22-21. Another shocker, 27-10. The Commanders beat the Chargers. They get Jaden Daniels back. He was good, not great in the game. Justin Herbert couldn't get much going. He had Madison Beer with him there pregame. That was good to see. Good for him as it relates to that. Just kidding. 10-0. They were up in that game, and then 27 unanswered for the Commanders as they come back and win that game. Did not see that one coming at all. And maybe the Chargers aren't as good as I thought, as they've struggled the past 2 weeks now, dropping 2 straight to 2 NFC East opponents who, the Commanders, a lot of people, they went to the championship game last week. A lot of people view them as a playoff team. I certainly do myself. Giants rookie quarterback. Those are 2 bad losses, and this one was at home. Maybe we need to pump the brakes a little bit on the Chargers. And don't blink now, but if the Chiefs win tonight, they're getting ready to chase down that AFC West again, and after being written off by so many people. And then a big-time upset last night. Patriots beat the Bills 23-20. We view the Bills as, one of the best teams in the National Football League. They lose. That's just a classic Vrabel game, right? Going on the road, primetime game, nobody giving you a chance and finding a way. Just a gutsy victory. Been a big Drake May believer here at the show. He's definitely the guy for them going forward. Needs to continue to, get better, make better decisions with the football, and certainly needs some more help around him. But he's definitely a franchise quarterback. He's everything you want in a franchise quarterback. The way he handles himself at the podium, the kind of teammate he is, the toughness, just the arm strength, everything about him is what you want, and he's going to be just fine in New England, and that's a big-time win, probably the biggest win of his career as they win that one 23-20. But upsets all over the place in the National Football League. That's good. Means more parity, means the league is more balanced, and that certainly makes it very, very exciting to watch, as it was a great week of professional football this weekend. It was great at college football as well. Let's talk about a few of these games there. Additionally, I think the game of the weekend coming in, you could argue it was Florida State, Miami, but I think it was probably Alabama, Vanderbilt. All the noise that Diego Pavia was talking about, saying that if they play their game, it's not going to be close. And, obviously Pavia and the Commodores, Clark Lee doing a tremendous job with that program, what they were able to do last year, knocking off Alabama, who at the time was the number 1 ranked team in the country. The final score was 30-14. It was a lot closer than that. The Tide had a garbage time touchdown, as time basically expired in that game, which, by the way, covered the spread for them in that game. But Ty Simpson, it's time we have the conversation that he's the best quarterback in the country. It feels like him and Sayin for Ohio State are the 2 best right now. They asked Ty Simpson to do a lot. In contrast to Sayin, he's not really asked to do a ton, and obviously he's got much better players around him. But Ty Simpson, he can absolutely spin it. He can make all the throws. Had the interception that he overcame early in the game. It was on 4th down. It actually worked out for Alabama, right, that it was picked off from a field position standpoint. But he's got athleticism. He can escape when the pocket collapses. He can run. He's athletic. He can make all the throws. He's got a great arm. He's accurate with the football. I mean, Ty Simpson looks like a guy that can play NFL football. Like, that looks like it's something that is a realistic conversation for him at some point. He has been terrific. Kalen DeBoer settling in. He had the adversity early. You're sitting there at home, you kind of get ambushed a little bit, you're behind, and next thing you know, Vanderbilt's driving and about to go up 14-0 on you, and then you force the turnover on Pavia in the red zone. That was the key in the game, right? Again, 30-14, it's not that close. No, it was a very close game, and Vanderbilt turned the ball over twice in the red zone of Alabama, and coming up with those key turnovers is what allowed Alabama to win the game. You forced the fumble on Pavia, Keon Sabb, a big interception against Pavia in the red zone there as well. massive win for Alabama because, you beat Georgia and it's like, all right, well, you got another ranked opponent here and you're coming back home. Let's see what you got again. And they played like a really good football team. That team has done a 180 since they lost week 1 against Florida State. Really, really impressive what Kalen DeBoer's been able to do, especially if everybody down south basically calling for his head, calling him for to be fired, basically saying he's incompetent, a guy that had no business replacing Nick Saban. Well, his team looks pretty good right now, and they've got another tough game this week as they go on the road. It's a noon game early against Missouri. We'll preview that game later in the week. Nobody talking about Missouri. They're undefeated, by the way. Maybe have the best running back in the country. That's going to be an incredible college football game and another opportunity for Alabama to prove themselves once again. But they are very much on upset alert as they travel to Missouri next week. Miami, the Hurricanes, they won 28-22. Again, I feel like we've said this several times. It was not a 28-22 game. Miami absolutely dominated that game. And I think we'll have to sit there and say Miami's real. Offensive line, they block, they can run the football. The freshman wide receiver, Tony, he's unbelievable. Carson Beck, he looks poised. Defense, they fly around and make plays. Their secondary is good. Ruben Bain, one of the best defensive players in college football. He is terrific, and they came into a hostile environment, Doak Campbell Stadium, rivalry game, a series in which they have dominated here recently, and they continued to dominate it. Got to give a lot of credit to Mario Cristobal. His team showed up. They were ready to play from the beginning of that game, from the kickoff. They were ready to go in there and assert their will on Florida State. That's exactly what they did. Castellanos, he made too many mistakes in the game. They kind of just got punched in the mouth a little bit. That gadgety, style that Florida State has, that Malzahn style, clearly it worked against Alabama. So Alabama was just kind of soft in that game. But when you have a really physical team with a really athletic front that Miami has, it's not going to work. And clearly it did not work. They were able to make it close late. Again, scoreboard-wise, but that game was in hand at that point as Miami absolutely dominated that game. The question with the Hurricanes is, can they continue this dominance? They don't really, when you look at their schedule, they don't really play anybody throughout the rest of this. So I think you have issues in terms of, okay, whether or not they're going to get tested, right? Because if they don't get tested and then they're in a spot in the playoff and all of a sudden they're in a close game in the fourth quarter, they might not know what to do. That's what happens with some of these teams that play in these weak conferences that don't play a ton of great football games, and I think Miami certainly fits that bill. We'll see if they find themselves in a close game, but it looks like they're a lock to make the playoff at this point. And, it's college football. That's why you play the games. Upsets happen, but it's hard to imagine them losing a game based on the product that they have put on the field. Sometimes these teams, they're undefeated and they have these weak schedules, but you kind of look at them and you're like, yeah, we know you're not for real. You're a little bit fraudulent. Miami looks for real, right? Again, they're not going to face the same adversity that some of these other top teams face, but I believe they would be able to go in there and compete with an Oregon, compete with an Ohio State, compete with an Alabama, compete with a Georgia, compete with an A&M, compete with some of these best teams in college football. But obviously their schedule is very, very weak, and we will see if that hurts them later in the year. Huge upset of the weekend. Penn State goes to UCLA and loses 42-37. I had been kind of waiting once we got this conference realignment where one of these teams would have to go out west, all right, and play in an earlier type of game, not a night game, and go out there and lose. I had been waiting for it to happen and leave it to James Franklin and Penn State for doing that. Credit to UCLA. They jumped on them from the start, right, and then they onside kicked them, and it was just like, whoa, next thing you know, Penn State's down double digits, and they're in a spot where I was like, ain't no way they ever thought they were going to be down in the football game. And you got to give credit to Nico Iamaleava, right? He's been bad over the course of this season to this point. Obviously, UCLA winless coming into this game, and they had played some out-of-conference teams that aren't very good at football, and they were losing those games as well. Iamaleava, he made the plays with his legs. He was terrific outside the pocket, extending quarterback run stuff. Was unbelievable. New play caller for UCLA. What a great story that is. Neuheiser, I believe is his last name, Jerry Neuheiser. His dad works for CBS. UCLA ties for a long time. He used to be a quarterback at UCLA. He gets an opportunity to call the plays, and the team clearly rallied around him. Great shot of him kind of getting carried off the field after that game. Embarrassing that was the crowd that turned out for UCLA. I mean, what a great venue. It's, in my opinion, the best place to play college football is the Rose Bowl, and they don't even come close to even partially filling that place out. So the crowd's certainly not a factor in this game for Penn State, but that's clearly the worst loss of James Franklin's career. Penn State now unranked. The fact that they were at the top in the preseason. I don't know why we do this. I don't know why I'm saying we. I don't know why the country does this. The AP does this, where they act like Penn State's good. I think we all know that they're not. Penn State, to be honest with you, it solely exists just to give Ohio State a top 10 win. That is the whole reason they exist, seemingly. But that really, really bad loss for them. I mean, we'll see if UCLA can get some momentum here going forward and win some more games. But it doesn't feel like they're going to be able to win a ton of games here this season. And the fact that Penn State lost to them, they still have life, right, if they win out. But obviously they cannot afford to slip up anymore, and they do have Ohio State on the schedule, which I got no reason to believe that they're going to be able to even give Ohio State a fight. And we'll see if people put James Franklin on the hot seat. He's continued to lose big games, but the thing that had kept him safe was the fact that Penn State always beat the teams that they should beat. That changed on Saturday when they went across the country, played UCLA, and lost. It'll be interesting if we see this continue. I mean, the fact that you're a Big Ten team having to go out and play in California and not play at night, that's big. And I think we're going to see more upsets like this as we progress in Big Ten play. Florida knocks off Texas 29-21. I didn't think they would be able to score enough points to hang in there this game. DJ Lagway, the talent's always been there. Nobody's questioned that, but it was his inability to throw the football to the correct team, which had really hurt him this season. And he settled in, and he played really good football against, I said it last week, thought Texas was the second best team in the country, and they scored 29 points on him. Clearly outplayed Arch Manning in the game. Florida only had one win at the time, but the swamp was still very much there, still very much a factor in the game. Arch Manning played better than he did against Ohio State, but clearly not even close to good enough. Had the 2 interceptions. They were not good. Did make some good plays, extending, off-script stuff. Made some plays with his legs in the game there as well. But, I thought that Arch Manning just needed to be competent in the game for them to be able to win. Turns out he needed to be a little bit more than that, considering what Florida was able to do, and he had the turnovers, and he wasn't able to do it. And it's the guy that many people thought would win the Heisman Trophy coming in. People thought Texas would win the national title. Now they have 2 losses, and they got to run the table in order to get into the college football playoff, and their schedule is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. So certainly growing pains with Arch Manning as the quarterback at Texas. Another game where Sark is just, people put him up there with the Kirby Smarts and the Ryan Days and the Dan Lannings of the world. And to be honest with you, I got respect for Sark, but I'm not quite sure that he belongs in that conversation. To be completely honest with you, we'll see if Texas can bounce back. Obviously, having a big one coming up against Oklahoma. No Jahmyr, so that gives them an opportunity. But, a lot of people expected Texas to be a lot better, but it's a bad loss. Billy Napier seemingly does this. It's the annual, Billy Napier trying to save his job tour, where he starts out awful, they lose all these games, then his team plays really hard, and they get some big wins, then he sticks around for the next year. They do this on an annual basis, and knocking off a top 10 team in Texas is just the latest example of that. Texas beat Houston 35-11. That was our one best bet of the weekend that actually played out the way we thought. Texas Tech's a really good team. They're going to be in my top 10 this week. What they were able to do, Baron Morton coming back, he looked good. They got a capable backup in Will Hammond. They're good along the defensive line. They've got skill guys. They spent a ton of money in NIL this offseason, and it's working out. Got to give Texas Tech a lot of credit. Clearly the best team in the Big 12, and look like they have a direct shot, barring a collapse, to the college football playoff this season. Impressive win for them. Cincinnati, the Bearcats, they pick up a big-time win, and we will spend time going forward on the show talking about the Cincinnati Bearcats because, quite frankly, they deserve it. I mean, they're a player mistake or two away from beating Nebraska and being undefeated this season. That's a good team, Iowa State. Obviously, Vegas knew something, right? I walked right into the trap. I didn't understand how UC was favored in that game. I knew, too, that they had both corners out. They had injuries all over their defense, but I still thought they were the better football team. I clearly was wrong. Got to give a lot of credit to Scott Satterfield. Biggest win of his career here as the head coach at UC. Brendan Sorsby is playing like a really good quarterback. How about that? And this Bearcat team playing with some physicality. That run from Walker, where he just absolutely ran over that linebacker for Iowa State. That is awesome. And if they can play with that chip on their shoulder, which I didn't know they were capable of doing, to be completely honest with you, but if they can play with that level of physicality and that level of toughness, they've got some skill guys that can propel them over the top. I didn't think this team was built to be that tough, but they showed some serious toughness. That's a blue-collar, tough team in Iowa State. They kind of beat them at their own game, right? And they were more disciplined than Iowa State in the game as well. When you think about Matt Campbell and his teams, you think about discipline, you think about buttoned up, you think about not making mistakes, not shooting themselves in the foot, being tough. And Cincinnati checked all of those boxes in that game against Iowa State. A really impressive win for them. I think they probably should be ranked. I don't believe that they are, but if they continue in this direction, they are going to be ranked. And I just said Texas Tech is clearly the best team in the Big 12, but shoot, UC keeps this up. Maybe they can enter that conversation. I know there were some people around the program that thought there was an opportunity, given the experience on this team, that they could take a step in the right direction and be competitive this year. I didn't think they were going to be able to do that, admittedly, with Scott Satterfield at the helm. But a really good start to this season for UC. That is a massive win at Nippert Stadium as they knock off a ranked opponent, number 14, Iowa State. Lastly, Ohio State. Look, Minnesota's terrible. PJ Fleck, I got respect for him, but it's a conference game. But, I mean, come on, Ohio State's schedule. They got Illinois this week. Penn State. Penn State's garbage, right? They're not going to struggle with Illinois, even though it's on the road, right? Nobody's really going to test Ohio State, but you got to give them a lot of credit because when you sit there and watch them play, you sit there and go, who's going to beat this team, right? And it's like, can Oregon get them? Well, I think Oregon's really good. Yeah, we'll see. Can A&M get them? Can Alabama get them? The quarterback's really, really good. I'm waiting for people nationally to wake up to that. I said earlier in the show, I think Ty Simpson and Julian Sayin are the two best quarterbacks in the country, and I don't think it's very close. And I get Sayin's got a lot of help. I get he's got a great offensive line and the best weapons in the world and a good head coach, but Julian Sain's really, really good, and that defense is real. Again, only giving up 3 points. I mean, they haven't given up more than 10 points in a game. Unbelievable. What that defense has been able to do with Matt Patricia. Kind of feels like it's going to be a one-year deal for him, kind of similar to Chip Kelly. Based on what he's doing, I think he's going to get a shot to be a DC again in the NFL, right? I mean, it just kind of feels like a matter of time. Obviously, if you're Ohio State, you're hoping he sticks around because what he is doing with the athletes that he has on defense is unbelievable. And, I scratch my head and I wonder, can anybody beat Ohio State? I think there's a lot of parity in college football. There's a lot of good teams, but one team clearly sticking out above the rest, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes. But the schedule, very, very weak. Illinois is ranked. Yeah, okay. I don't anticipate that being much of a battle, but it is on the road and it is an earlier game, so we'll see. Big noon. We'll preview that later in the week. Illinois, Ohio State, and Alabama, Missouri. 2 great noon games next Saturday. That should be a lot of fun. Baseball-wise, we'll spend more time talking about baseball throughout the week. Blue Jays, my World Series pick, they're up 2-0 on New York. They got bats, man. They can hit. They will play again tomorrow. We got the National League tonight, game 2 of those series. Dodgers and Phillies in Philadelphia. Snell back on the bump. Reds fans certainly are very aware of that. And, I'm expecting LA to win that game tonight, go up 2-0, and then go back to LA. It feels like the Dodgers are going to win that series to me. Cubs-Brewers should be a good game later on tonight. Imanaga taking the hill for Chicago in that game. Milwaukee leads that series 1-0. And then Seattle able to get a big win behind Castillo against Skubal last night. That's huge as that series now 1-1. They'll play again tomorrow. That's a great series. And as I mentioned, Blue Jays up 2-0 in that series. So 2 baseball games tonight. And also Monday Night Football as well, which is a great game, by the way. A sneaky good game. The Jaguars, I think with Liam Cohen, they're doing some good things. Again, they got lucky, or they got, they shot themselves in the foot against Cincinnati. They should have won that game. It should be another win for this Jacksonville team. Liam Cohen looks like a really, really good rookie head coach. We'll see how that looks against the Steve Spagnuolo defense, but I'm really excited for that game. Chiefs-Jaguars tonight. We'll talk about it tomorrow. That'll do it for this edition of the show. Got a great week coming up here on the show. We'll have some guests this week. We'll get Reed Mouse on, maybe Casey McAllister, maybe Elliot Rearing. Maybe we'll get some beat reporters for the Cincinnati Bengals or Bearcats there as well. So we'll have some guests coming your way this week. That should be very, very exciting. Off the bench, Reed Mouse is gone. He's got some video board stuff to do for us here at Chatterbox. Trace will be on for some days here this week. That certainly is very exciting, so make sure you stick around for that. And we'll have our NFL Power Rankings tomorrow, Bengals conversation, and lots of exciting stuff planned this week. And certainly looking forward to that. Appreciate everyone, as always, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow right here on the Stone Shield Show. Take care, everybody.